As close as humanly possible. Okay. Good evening, everyone. It is 5 p.m. 5 p.m. on Tuesday, April 18th, 2023. I'd like to call to order the Lancaster Select Board meeting. We will start by telling folks that this is being broadcast on Sterling-Lancaster television, as you can see, and will likely be rebroadcast, but is not being recorded on Zoom, as we are not on Zoom today. And then a roll call. Ms. Turner.
Here.
Mr. Allison.
Here.
Mr. Kerrigan here. We are all here. All right. Next item on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes. That's to review and take action on the Select Board meeting minutes for March 20th, 23rd, 27th, 3rd, and April 3rd and April 7th.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I might ask to take March 20th as a separate vote, because I was not...
Speak into your microphone.
I'm sorry. I'll repeat. Mr. Chair, if I may ask that we take March 20th first and separately, as I was not present at that meeting, and then we can vote the others.
Okay, so if you want to make a motion on 23, 27, 3, and 7, that would be in order.
Okay. I offer a motion to approve the minutes of March 23rd, 2023, March 27th, 2023, April 3rd, and April 7th, 2023.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Ms. Turner?
Aye.
Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Mr. Kerrigan? Aye. All right, March 20th, 23 minutes need to be approved. Jason, you and I were there. Would you be kind enough to make a motion?
I move to approve the minutes for March 20th, 2023.
And I second those. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Mr. Kerrigan? Aye. 2-0-1 for an abstention because Alex wasn't here. Do you want to officially abstain?
I abstain.
Okay, perfect. All right, new business. Review and accept proponent and opponent statements for 2023 annual election ballot question 1 as outlined in Lancaster's Special Act of 2004. I will say before I turn it over to Kate to go through this with us, you have the material in front of you. We have a number of items to tackle between now and 6 p.m. when we have the town-wide forum for the ballot, or for the annual town meeting warrant review. So hopefully we will move with all due haste and process these. The worst case scenario, we have extra time between this meeting and that. All right, Kate, can you take us through how we got here and what we have in front of us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. What you have in front of you is what's part of the special act. We have the question title, which is Prop 2.5 override. We have the pursuant to the Commonwealth Acts of 2004 and the language therein, which calls for a proponent and opponent statement of not more than 250 words, and to choose the opponent and proponent within 7 days of creating the question text. We have the question as it will appear on the ballot, the fair and concise summary, which is prepared by town council per the statute, and then the yes and the no. Would you like me to read those?
Well, let me just review that we, at a previous meeting, assigned you the proponent role for writing and Cheryl the opponent role.
That's correct.
Just for the record. Do you want to read the yes and the no vote? Is that...
Sure. So, a yes vote stabilizes Lancaster's finances and ensures the town's ability to fund and sustain its current level of service for all municipal, public safety, educational, cultural, and social service activities through at least 2028. Affirmative action effectively passes a level service budget which adequately provides for the town's day-to-day operations, including the functions and staffing levels within the town departments and through the Neshoba and Minuteman Regional School Districts. A yes vote preserves the town's free cash and reserve fund balances, which contribute in part to sustaining Lancaster's credit rating and thereby ensuring lower interest rates and payments for all bonded capital, municipal, and school projects. Affirmative action negates the town's need to propose additional overrides in future years and allows the town the ability to focus on proposing an operational underride once additional revenues are received from both current and future commercial projects. Select Board Chair Stephen Kerrigan stated, quote, "In short, if people want a first-rate education for their children, nice roads, sustainable parks and conservation lands, responsible human services operations, and civic or cultural engagement programs, you must pay for it. It doesn't just happen," end quote. Do you want me to read the no, or do you want to talk about the yes?
We can talk about the yes. Thoughts, comments, questions, concerns?
Looks fantastic.
I was going to say edits. That's good.
Well, as we know, we just received this as I sat down, so thank you for reading it, Kate, and thank you for doing it. It's very nice and concise. I haven't read the no vote yet, so why don't we look at both of those? Does that make sense? And then,
No, we totally can. I just from a level set, just wanted to see if there's any overt problems with the yes vote right now.
there's not overt, but there's some things that I'll ask questions about.
Perfectly fine.
Nothing huge.
Hello. All right.
Okay.
Let's go to a no vote.
Okay. A no vote indicates that the town does not authorize an override of Proposition 2.5, and as a result, agrees that decreasing school programming, town services, and closing certain buildings and operations are necessary in order to keep taxes down. It could be likely through further utilization of one-time funds and/or the allocation of current reserve funds that Lancaster will be able to meet its minimum obligations relative to elections and other state-required services. However, public amenities, infrastructure repairs, and other non-essential services must be stalled or canceled until Lancaster's revenues better align with its expenses. Many neighboring communities have tax rates so high residents have been priced out of their homes. Lancaster does not want this. While it will be challenging, it is not impossible to operate the town's schools, emergency services, and limited governmental operations with $1.2 million less. Voting no says no to the proposed budget and directs the town to cut $1.2 million more to keep taxes down.
All right. Any questions, comments specifically about no? Yes.
Yeah, so this had to be 250 words, right?
Or less.
Yes.
Or less, I'm sorry.
Or less.
Yeah, it feels like there could be a lot more adjectives in there. But yeah, because I think it's going to be like a no is much more significant. I don't know if it fully describes the outcome to the town. I mean, it does paraphrase it, but yeah.
I will say at some point the idea is that the person writing it is writing it from an opponent position. So it is not writing the opponent position from a proponent perspective. So, whereas the proponent might use more adjectives to describe the draconian cuts that would be required if we were to vote no. Like draconian, good adjective. Do you have any?
It's a good adjective.
Yes.
So just for the record, the yes vote is 186 words, and the no vote is 163 words.
And to be clear to folks, this is not on the ballot, but will be there when you come into this very room to vote. As
Yes.
a piece of paper that you will,
It'll be at the places where you fill out the ballot. It will be at the places where the warrant is posted.
copy.
So we had talked about a couple questions. Are we still planning on sending out the ballot? Excuse me, the warrant, rather?
The warrant is getting sent out, yes. It's currently in
The
production.
town meeting warrant.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is tied, so is that appropriate, do you think, to include something like this? I know it's not part of the law.
Well, this isn't tied in that, this is a question, the budget that's in that warrant is,
I understand.
okay, so it's, yeah.
It's just the summary, it's obviously, we are planning on the budget passing, the budget needs to pass town meeting to do
Yes.
this, so that was.
Yes.
So first, I'd like to thank both Kate and Cheryl for writing these. I think it's very difficult, and I had spoken that I didn't think Cheryl should do this, not that she couldn't, but just because it puts her into a very difficult position to do so as a town employee in finance, because I understand coming up with this. So good work on bridging that. in both cases, well, in the yes vote, are we comfortable saying, let's see, the sentence that begins with affirmative action negates the town's need to propose additional overrides in future years and allows the town ability to focus on proposing an operational underride once additional revenues are received from both current and future projects. It negates the town's need to propose additional override in future years. I think maybe we should quantify that a little bit and say in near years, or I don't know.
No, I hear your point, yeah.
Because we're not going to, we can't say that we're never going to ask for an
Right.
override again.
And we do allude to 2028 up top, so in coming
In the near
years.
future?
In the near future. In the next several years?
I would just say that I think you'd have to clarify that with a hopeful, but yeah.
Okay.
That works too. Something just to make sure, because I want to be clear that we don't promise something that,
Well, I
We
mean,
have to do
but,
anything.
yeah, no, but to be clear, barring a catastrophic circumstance, which everybody's budget is passed barring catastrophic circumstance, if this override is passed, financially, it should keep us, barring a catastrophic circumstance, and I'm looking at Cheryl because she's nodding her head, it will keep us from needing to do another override until at least 2028.
right.
So,
So maybe somehow
would you be?
reflect that.
Yeah, no, I hear, that's a valid one.
I think it's valid. I would hate to speculate. It feels a little speculative, and it's what we want. Don't get me wrong. We all want that, but I don't want to set expectations that we are not necessarily in control of.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
in a perfect world, this would have been done by not town staff who take their direction from the board, but citizens who do not. And so I would be careful to change the words in that this isn't the pro and con from the board.
Fair point.
Because in future years, when additional ballot questions come up from other ends that are not
We're
town
not supposed to edit
staff,
the town, yeah. So if this were, we were to look at these as if they are.
you would look at this like it's
No, to look as if they're
Jane
done
Doe
by-
and John
yeah,
Doe who wrote these.
Yeah, I get your point.
Now, if there's a grammatical error, you think that that statement is not appropriate, you can instruct, well, it would be to instruct me to talk to myself, and that's fine, and go back and try to work something else out, which I will do.
Right.
I just note that in the future, if you instruct me to go back to the yes and that person says no, that is what it
Right,
is.
that is what it is, yeah, because it's that person who drafted it, which is a very fair point.
So when
I try to make them.
Well done.
when we appointed you, I know that this was going to be difficult for both you and for Cheryl, so my understanding at the time was that we were going to be able to look at that, and I know even in the citizens, I guess in the citizens one, you're saying that we, hands off. It's like a citizen's petition, we're not allowed to,
You could make a recommendation or ask a question, but I guess if the citizen petitioner wants to move forward with exactly what they have written, they have every ability to do that.
So, yeah, so we're in a unique
This is a
position
weird
now.
one.
Yeah, where the citizen writing it was directed to write it by us, and you're not a citizen of town, but an employee. So I think the flag is, let's not assume this is our power moving forward. That in
Well-
future years, we don't have the authority to, and we don't, we tasked her with writing this, which I hadn't even thought about, that flag. I mean,
I could say
personally-
affirmative action reduces the town's need.
see,
Do you like, is that
reduces
word
the
more
need.
yes,
amenable?
that sounds good.
See, then now that is just chain cube public hearing, just comments and just
Correct.
appropriately, but not in
I just
direction.
don't, I just want to
Copy
be
that.
clear because it's
Yes.
new
No, that's a good flag.
news to most.
Okay.
Another question on the, actually it comes up in both the yes and the no. My understanding, and times have changed so much, I know we're just looking at changing the district agreement a bunch, excuse me, not a bunch, a small amount that it's on there, that if 2 out of the 3 district towns of Neshoba vote for the budget, that budget remains. And so whether or not an override passes, we still are obligated to fund the school district. So in here, it talks about reducing the schools.
Well, we do have the ability to go to the district and ask them for relief and ask the other towns for relief under the circumstances, but I mean, you're right, they could hold the hard line and say no.
They could, but if you don't appropriate the funds, then it
Violates
doesn't
the
matter whether the other towns vote to increase the budget by 40%. If we don't have a balanced budget that appropriates the funds, we can't pay it. So then it goes, theoretically, I guess it would be a legal matter, which arguably you would go to some type of mediation and say the town doesn't have the capacity or the permission to raise and appropriate the amount needed to sustain this bill, and then that's where the conversation
Well,
starts.
this question came up during our override many years ago, and the answer, my understanding was that the state would intercede and take, we have our funding would be there, so we would essentially be forced to make it whole. Now, that could have changed. We have changed the agreement somewhat, tweaked it, but
Yeah,
is that something we could
How
change?
does that apply to the yes and the no?
Because in here it says in both yes and no that that the impact could be felt essentially by the Neshoba and Minuteman school districts.
And, I mean,
that's true.
And it's true, yeah.
And it's true. I think, so equate it to non-school, right? We have contracts all over town, employment contracts, union contracts, et cetera. We're obligated to pay those unless we don't have the funds to do so.
Yep, subject
And then those persons, so an employment contract or a collective bargaining agreement is no different than the contracts that we have with the schools, right? We need to have the ability to raise and appropriate. And so while the budget asks to appropriate, the override allows both to happen. And so if the override doesn't pass, then we're not raising the amount of funds necessary to cover our obligations. So then we would have a duty to mitigate loss. So you would start with basically the contracts, of which the school are some, and say, I'm going to reduce these contracts. Or Union ABC, you were supposed to get 2%, but you can only get 1 or 0. And those things are then mediated through the legal system. It's expensive.
No,
and-
I understand that. My understanding was that the school contract, that had sort of been stipulated anticipating this. I know that in union contracts and every bill that we pay, it's subject to appropriation. And in this case, I thought that the state aid came into play. But at any rate, we know that the general concept of it. So.
Okay.
I don't know how else to
You know,
answer that.
yeah. Any further questions about this, or can we give the blessing to have this printed up and posted around when we post the election warrant?
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you both. Do you need a vote on this, or?
Yep.
Is there a vote to approve as amended?
So moved.
Do you want to second?
All right,
Do we
moved and
wanna-
seconded. Is there any discussion?
Would we like to vote the amendment, or do you want to just,
Move it as amended is fine.
okay.
The amendment's just the one word?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Ms. Turner?
Aye.
Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Mr. Kerrigan, aye. That is approved. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, both of you. Speaking of the town election, review and accept the warrant for annual town election to be held on May 8th, 2023, and I will go turn that on in just a second, at the Town Hall Auditorium from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. While Kate begins her explanation, I will go turn on the overhead that will show you a small part of my head during the entire presentation.
Or you could just move to the
I
right.
could just move, I suppose, yeah, that's also.
He didn't have enough product today?
Not enough product existing. Hannaford's doesn't have enough product. It's called the on-off button.
Not the brightest bulb, as they say.
It's coming on. It's coming on. Be patient. It's coming on. I can see it.
Patience is a virtue.
I'm just about to stick my face in that. It's the second.
Oh, I did that during candidates night. Yeah, when I tried to move the camera, and then I went, oh, God. It was just from here up.
While we're doing this, we're going to go a little out of order. While we're doing this, we have a resignation from the Government Study Committee of Sue Thompson. We thank Sue for her service on the committee, but she recognized she had significant schedule conflicts, and she indicated she wished to resign. Is there a motion to accept that resignation?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Ms. Turner?
Aye.
Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Ms. Kerrigan? Aye. Thank you, Sue. There you go. Thanks. We snuck one in.
This is the ballot.
Yes, it is.
It is the smallest writing ever. So the question is down here. What needs to be printed on the ballot is council's summary. So if I can get my magnifying glasses, it says, shall the town of Lancaster be allowed to, oh, you know what?
Could probably just increase the size.
Look at this. Okay. Shall the town of Lancaster be allowed to assess an additional $1,200,000 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purposes of funding the operating budgets of the town government and school departments for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023? A vote yes on question 1 allows the operating budgets of the town government and school departments for FY24 to be funded. A vote no on question 1 disapproves the operating budgets of the town government and school departments for FY24. Yes, no.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Not, I mean, that's what's required to be posted, so. Great.
Okay,
Any
so
other-
that's, oops, sorry.
No, go ahead.
That's the first, and then this is the optional ballot.
Reminder to folks, we had decided to do an optional, non-binding ranked ballot, ranked choice ballot, which you see up there, those in the room here, to discuss the question of preferred dates and times for town meeting, for special town meetings.
In the interest of conserving paper, I printed only one copy, so you guys can both look if you want it on color or no color. This is the only color choice of paper because we own it and we don't have to buy it.
Okay, so let's first, is that part of the warrant for the annual town election?
You can do it as two separate, but those are,
Let's do it as two separate and see if we can get a quick approval on the,
want to go back?
yes, on the warrant for the annual town election. Is there a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Is there a-
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Here, my only discussion is thanks to everybody who's running for office. We appreciate it. All right, that being said, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Ms. Turner?
Aye.
Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Mr. Kerrigan, aye. The annual town election warrant is approved. Now for the optional ranked choice voting ballot. Have you both had a chance to look at it?
So Kate, I'm sorry.
Sure.
You said that, thank you for printing these. You said you printed these just so we could look at the sample, see which one we wanted, and
want.
we will be print. So do these run through the machine with this kind of thing?
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's
So
good.
the question only is color or black and white?
right.
Okay.
Color or
So
black and
color
white.
obviously looks a lot better. It's more expensive. I mean, that would
Only by, well, not only, but it's only 5 cents.
10 cents a piece.
5 cents, new
Oh,
contract.
Smart shopper, okay.
This will be the entirety of the color printing for the next fiscal year.
I think so.
I'm just kidding.
Except for it happens in this fiscal year, so.
Joke's
I
on
vote
us.
for, I would vote for cheaper.
So what do you
In
say?
a shocking twist.
So, a couple questions. I think I had proposed, this will be our first ranked choice ballot ever in Lancaster.
This
That,
was it.
Yeah,
We should call this the Allison ballot.
Sweet. 2 L's. So, can we have maybe an optional Zoom just to bring everybody on board with ranked choice voting in Lancaster? This is the first time we're doing it. It can even be a recording,
what's
just
the
something.
question?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just in general,
Like
having
a-
ahead of time, like, hey, you're new to ranked choice voting. This
Yep.
is how it works, sort of thing.
Working on
oh,
that.
and explain.
Yeah. Kerrigan explainer, yes, one of those.
Yep. Everyone
Did you want
loves
that
those.
printed?
And,
Did you want that
and
printed?
I think this looks awesome. Thank you.
Did you want your explainer printed on here, you mean, or no?
No, the explainer not printed, just something that is accessible. It can be accessible digitally, can be made available at a computer at the health and at the senior center, so somebody can come down and see it down there. All of those great things.
Okey doke. Sounds
Fantastic.
good.
Awesome. Any other questions? Hearing none.
I'm sorry, did
reading
you
those
vote
to-
on which
I'm actually
we're
one
reading
you
it.
want?
How
to.
quaint,
Oh,
huh?
okay.
What's that?
Actually, I'm actually reading it. What a quaint notion, huh?
Will it actually be this big? I'm just curious.
Yes.
Yes.
It looks good. Weekdays.
And
Looks
for-
good.
Awesome.
We did discuss in the past that this is purely informative
Yes.
because if
Yes, this
there
is,
may be options that
Yeah.
the majority likes that are not.
right, and this is
Feasible.
totally non-binding, and I believe our bylaws require our town meeting to take place, unless we come to a nice agreement with Sterling-Lancaster Community Television, on the first Monday of May, or second Monday of, or sorry, the town meeting has to be the first Monday of May, the annual town meeting.
Unless
Unless
the board
unless
by
the
majority.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless we
Well, to
act in a
change it.
different manner, right. But this is non-binding. Any other questions?
No. I think the color's nice, but I don't think we need it. unless
Yeah,
it's-
I agree. Awesome. Is there a motion to authorize that item printed without color and distributed at the town election?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Ms. Turner?
Aye.
Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Mr. Kerrigan, aye. Aye, aye, aye. All right, next item up for bid. Garden Club sale. Ms. Turner, you've got two in a row, so you can take them in whatever order you wish. Cleanup days or Garden Club sale?
Well, yeah, wearing many hats and just great community events. The Garden Club sale is coming up, and I should have written this down. I think it's the third Saturday in May, so I'll have to look at my dates. Right now, the Garden Club does a lot of civic projects for the town, and this is their fundraiser to help fund that. So if people would like to attend, or if anybody wants to dig up their plants and donate them, please look on the Garden Club website for instructions on how to do that. It's a great event, and it helps our town through a nonprofit. Another nonprofit, the Lancaster Land Trust, is sponsoring cleanup days, and that's when all that roadside trash, or some of the roadside trash, gets picked up. There's always more. The yellow bags this year are available at the library, so you can just walk into the library and pick those up, or if you can't get to the library, on the website you can ask and people will drop off bags for you, and you can pick your street and clean it up. There's a closing party on the 29th at the First Church, which is a barbecue to celebrate Earth Day and to celebrate the cleanup. So I hope everybody grabs a bag. I think we all will grab bags. And
29th of April, yes?
29th of April, so it's ongoing this month.
Saturday, the 29th of April.
Yes, and thanks to the First Church, thanks to the Land Trust, thanks to everybody who picks up. So
Sounds
that's
good. Thank you very much.
If the town was in a better financial spot, I would wish that we could offer a reward for the most Fireball little canisters picked up on Brockelman Road. If anybody's interested, there's probably about 6,000 of them there.
I think it's Mint or McGillicuddy's on Neck Road.
There's not on our stretch of Neck Road, but yes. But I'm glad to get you a yellow bag. You can get out there and get going on the Fireball. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Next item is the May 3rd, 2023 Annual Town Meeting Updates and Planning Efforts. Kate, take it away.
Well, I actually don't have, we haven't gotten together to do this because we had the long weekend and some staff were off on Friday, so.
Okay.
But what I can say is that we're going to be utilizing the auditorium and the Mary Rowlandson Gymnasium. We'll be offering masks and sanitizer for folks, but we won't be having the same type of social distance room, other than the gym affords that just by default. So if folks are interested, Sterling-Lancaster TV has been kind enough to mic that up, and Mandy will be getting a deputy moderator for that room. So you can come and go
Mandy, our
from there.
town clerk.
Our town clerk.
Yes.
The check-ins will be using the poll pad, so it will be a lot faster. She's also using the poll pads for the election, so folks don't necessarily need to check out, so that should be a much faster process, which is great.
Perfect.
So that's what I have for now.
Thank you. And I think we learned a lot through the last couple special town meetings about how well to do it, and I know that our friends in public safety will be a big part of it. And I have all the faith in the world in you and the town clerk and everybody and how we're going to pull this off. Yes.
Yes, I think the last special town meeting went very well, and this will probably be a high attendance town meeting, but I don't know if it'll be that high. That was quite extraordinary. One of the concerns that I've heard mentioned, just to look at, and I'm sure I'll figure out, is parking, because of the time of the year with the fields. And the other thing was that went well was childcare. So I'm assuming that we're going to be offering that again.
Yes, we're offering childcare, and the first row of parking, like last time, will be folks with handicap placards or those who are mobility impaired. We'll have persons out there helping folks in and expediting them to the front of the line, along with drop-off, and then having volunteers help expedite those persons to the front of the line so they can get up with the rest of their party.
And first row is, if you're pulling in, dumpster, all the slots
Correct.
next to there down to the entrance of Maryville. So.
Correct.
And are we putting the word out? Do you need volunteers to help with all that?
I can ask our town clerk. I think she has a lot of folks from behind. And Mr. Dave Millette, who happens to be in the audience tonight, is the keeper of the first row.
And you did a great job.
He was given the best vest
He had
because
the
it
best
blinked.
orange vest.
A volunteer extraordinaire?
Indeed.
Excellent.
All right. I think it goes without saying, we thank the town staff for all the work they're doing to help us pull this off, and we thank our friends at Sterling-Lancaster Community Television for all the work that they're doing.
Kate, I think I've asked you this before. If you could go over it again really quickly, explain what will be voted on at town meeting with regard to the budget versus what will be voted on the election as part of the budget.
We are, I believe we're doing FY24 budget override. Can we move to that?
As long as we go over the difference between voting at town meeting versus voting at
Absolutely.
the election. Thank you.
So let's move, unless we have anything more on just the operations side of town meeting, we will move into item 6 of section 3, which is FY24 budget / override, last minute needs and queries. Mr. Allison has a query. I don't know that it's last minute, but
Okay,
His
so
question stands.
okay, his question stands.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, but
yeah.
just, sorry, were we, for B, I know item C, staff was off. Is that the same with the moderator guidelines? Will we be having a meeting with the moderator? Or were you ahead of time, or did we just, I mean, I know you always
What's the
do.
question?
It was just moderator guidelines.
Well,
I
that's
know
the-
people ask.
As you all know, that's the moderator's meeting.
Right.
We've met and discussed
Times.
the times for each group presenter. Kate has communicated with the citizen presenters and department presenters. I know we're going to go through that at this 6 p.m. meeting as well. And I'm sure there'll be another meeting with the moderator just before the May 3rd meeting to make sure everybody is all set. But it's the moderator's meetings and a meeting and his opportunity to present guidelines.
And one of the questions last time, before we get back to the others, sorry, is the clickers, are they going to be available?
No. Yeah, not at this meeting. No.
Okay.
If we want to do multiple rooms, clickers is not an option.
It's
correct?
not,
Well,
yeah.
yeah.
So it is, I will say on the clicker question, there's a lot of work to be done before we start using clickers again. So if we, in discussing future special town meetings or town meetings, we say we're going to use clickers, then we're using clickers, otherwise assume we are not. Frankly, due to the capacity and the amount of people that are going to be there, which is fantastic. It's a good problem to have. All right. Item 6. You've heard the question.
Right.
We're about to hear the answer.
So the moderator has decided that he will not be calling a vote because a vote at town meeting doesn't matter. It's the vote at the ballot box. However, we are going to proceed with the presentation and then questions and answers as if it were something that was going to be voted upon. If for some reason he changes his mind or has decided that his choice would be to do a paper ballot for that. And so we would do that in the same way that we did the paper ballot at the last town meeting, where it's handed out at the time of registration, that there's the lockbox, et cetera. And we would have more detailed instructions on that to give to people as they check in so that they know. But people have to physically be present. They can't give their tag to anybody else to vote for them. And again, it's somewhat perfunctory, so this warrant actually is 21 articles long, which is, my understanding is that's pretty good size for Lancaster, which is great. So I think the idea is to get to the votes that need to be had, with the understanding that the vote to vote on the budget is the ballot question that you saw, which is on the 8th of May. That will be the last slide, well, the first and the last slide in the presentation on the evening of the budget. Of town meeting, which Article 1 is the budget.
So to be clear, the budget will not be approved at town meeting. The
Correct,
budget
it
will
is
be
not-
approved at the ballot box on
That's
election day.
correct.
Thank you.
But the budget, as demonstrated in all the materials, is the budget for people to review. They'll have a chance to hear all about it at town meeting,
Correct.
as they have for this extensive budget process, which has gone on. And good news, Cheryl, Kate, town departments, you get to start all over again in July. Wouldn't that be a lot of fun? But it's not as if there is no budget. There is a very detailed budget that will be approved or disapproved on May 8th. Ms. Turner.
So this is a different approach. I'm new to it, so I'm just hearing and processing here. So it's the town meeting is the legislative body, and they typically approve bylaws, budgets, and all that. Is everything going to the, everything money, budget going to the ballot?
So I think I can answer this in that if the budget as presented and we recommended envisions the override passing. So so everything that is in that budget is in the budget that is in essence being voted up or down on May 8th.
So things such as the water enterprise funding is being voted on as it always has been at town meeting? That kind of thing?
Yes, those are outside the operating budget of the town, yeah.
So what you're voting on is an operational override for the levy, so that it doesn't have any impact on enterprise, special revenue, or revolving.
Right.
So those
Those
will
are separated.
stand regardless.
Yeah.
The only one that would be impacted would be the article for the class and comp plan. Because
sorry, for
the
the what?
class and comp plan, so the
Okay.
non-union employees, as that has a 2% increase, which relies on the override. But it's encapsulated in that. So if the override passes, that passes. If the override doesn't pass, we wouldn't be implementing that anyway.
So can I ask the merit of why we wouldn't have the voice of the people, why we would choose not to have it voted on at town meeting? I understand that it's sort of pro forma if it still needs to go to the ballot box, but it's...
I mean, I would argue that you're giving the voice of the people more say by having it at the ballot box, but I would go back to my earlier point that this is the moderator's meeting, his rules, knowing full well that it is on the ballot 5 days later. He made the decision, as is his right, to not vote on a particular item because it's going to be voted on by a larger group of people, arguably 5 days later. But you can make the argument, but you would have to make it to him because it's his meeting. the quaint parts of an open town meeting.
Well, so as long as it's, and it was presented as an omnibus budget essentially in the town meeting, which I'm assuming is the same way that that would be ratified. So it's essentially, I can think of it as ratifying it, but it's voting for it at the ballot, right?
You're voting for the ability to levy that amount of money to pay for what has been delineated in the budget that's been approved by all of us.
Okay.
Okay. Any other last minute needs, queries related to the FY24 budget or override, other than the need for it to pass? And any queries people have about it, they could direct to me. Glad to answer them.
Will we be discussing, I mean, I know that we have discussed, and as you said, the budget has been on the agendas, although we have the lines. Will we have, during our meetings between now and then, which is coming up, are we going to have any other discussions on the budget? I know I had wanted to put it on this meeting, but
This envisions you being able to ask whatever questions, whatever queries you might have or last minute needs. We will not have a meeting between now and the meeting we have just before the town meeting.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's April 18th and the meeting is in
okay, so
2
I'm
weeks.
sorry. When I misread your response, when I asked if it would be on, and you said no, I didn't think that this was going to be an opportunity, so, but I
Well,
can
this
still ask them.
placeholder language was there, and I envisioned that if you had questions about the 24 budget, this would satisfy that. So if you have any further questions, now's your time.
Yeah, are there any existing questions? Does anyone on the board have any
I
questions?
don't have any
Yeah,
questions.
I have questions. So
Okay?
the ARPA and the capital plan, a lot of it relies on ARPA, which is outside of what we have talked about. But people have asked for details about that. Can we get a sort of a detailed breakdown of that? I know
Can
it's
I
not.
just flag that this is about the operating budget for the town?
No, I understand
Right.
that.
So
But it's related because people are
But it's-
looking at the budget as a whole, so.
Right, but this, I just want to be very clear to folks watching at home and in the room. There's a capital budget, which are capital projects. This operating budget envisions no capital items, yes?
Yeah, correct. I know what you're asking because I've been asked it by a member of another board.
But let me just finish this one clarification. The questions before the town for the town meeting and the town election are for the operating budget, for the tax levy for the operating budget, not for capital. So we could definitely have a meeting
That's
about
true.
capital budget, but when you mentioned to me that you had questions, you said it was about the budget. Rightly or wrongly, I assumed you meant the FY24 operating budget that's requiring the hopeful yes vote on the override.
Most of the questions that I've had from people are regarding the capital budget, which integrates a lot of it into it, and also the uses of the ARPA funds, because as we know, ARPA can be used on operating budget. We've just chosen to spend the ARPA money in the way that has been laid out in the budget book. So I think that, bless you, while they're not voting on that, I think it's
So what are their
related.
questions then? I mean, I'm glad to have, I think we've had a couple of capital budget meetings, and I think they're really important, and we should continue to have them.
Can I just say, on August 10th of '22, the board got a memo, and as did the finance committee, and literally nothing has changed since then. We froze it all then. So everything that's in this is what's in the coffers.
So, at any rate,
I'm sorry.
I guess my question-
I was just asking for a breakdown.
reclaiming the chair, hold on a second, I just want
Sorry.
to make sure we have some order. So clarify, quick question, do you have questions about specific questions about the operating budget that we are considering for the override on May 8th?
No, not right
Okay.
now.
Then I would suggest any questions we have about capital budget, which is frozen and we're not making those decisions relative to the override, can they wait to a future meeting? Or do you want to discuss them?
All I asked for was just sort of a more detailed breakdown of the capital. For example, there's 800,000 or something for miscellaneous expenses in fire. There's some in DPW, and they have. I'm sure they're all very important. People have asked how those are being spent or what they're being done. So
So the page that you're talking about which is the aggregate data for capital on page 21, has 7 pages behind it that outlines it down to
The dollar.
the dollar and cents, like including the DPW. Part of that 800,000 is $39,794 for a vehicle, for example, a 2007 Ford Cut van. So there's that kind of, that is here, and we've been through it. As far as the ARPA money, we made a conscious decision in August to freeze spending or any allocations from there. And at that meeting, you actually said that you were against using ARPA funds for reoccurring expenses. So your comment just 2 minutes ago confuses me because it's the opposite of what the board told me.
And I did say that, and in past times, and then I have said, since they changed the laws about it, and since we entered dire times, I recognize that there, you know, you...
Since they changed laws about?
How you could use ARPA. When they first released ARPA, it couldn't be used for operating.
No, that's
No,
not
yeah,
true. That
no.
was CARES money
Yeah,
that
it was
couldn't.
a different pocket of
But
money.
I quite literally presented that to the board in August and
Yes.
asked for a recommendation, and that was the board's unanimous recommendation, so I went ahead with it. So
Well-
to now say 2 weeks before,
It's not 2 weeks before. I have said this, and I said that... This in the-
Let's,
if you
Everyone-
can look back, it's in the minutes. I
Can-
saw it already.
okay. So is your question still stand on where the data is? Because it's on page 20 something.
Yeah, there were some other subjects that came up that...
Are they
details
related
it.
to the FY24 operating budget?
No, they're
Because we've been
not.
discussing
Nope.
this since July. And we're asking the townspeople to take a very serious vote on May 8th. And we're asking them to do their research and look at their data and do their studying and work. It'd be good if we came to them having done the same thing. So I don't have any further questions about the operating budget. Does anyone else on the board have any questions about the operating budget?
I have done the work and I have looked at the things. And I've also said that I had changes prior to this meeting, so...
But the
so
changes
that's
you're-
fine. It's not about the operating budget.
So then it's,
Is the answer to your question.
okay. So any changes you have are to the frozen capital budget from August of 2022?
Yes.
Okay.
But
Then since it's been frozen since August of '22, I would ask the board's forgiveness if we move it to another meeting, since it's frozen and not going anywhere. And not take up more time, as we have 12 minutes before we have to do a townwide forum on the town meeting warrant. If you have any questions about the operating budget, we're glad to answer them. But I would ask that in the 2 weeks that we have leading up, that be as specific as possible and tonight, so that we can get answers to you. Do you have
Okay.
any?
No.
Well, we'll go
And
through
then
the rest of
I
the
was gonna
agenda, and so until 6, if you come up with one, we can certainly circle back to it. Does that sound good? Awesome. We have an appointment to make. The Conservation Commission, Dennis Hubbard Jr. Has applied to be a member of the Conservation Commission, term to expire June 30th, 2025.
So moved.
Okay, I was going to say it's very important, so they meet their quorum. We thank Mr. Hubbard for applying and the rest of the Conservation Commission for being patient with us with getting an appointment. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
I think
Hearing none.
he's still serving on the ZBA, so I think it would be valuable to have his perspective on the ZBA as a conservation commissioner.
Great. All right, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Ms. Turner?
Aye.
Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Mr. Kerrigan, aye. Congratulations, Dennis. Welcome to yet another part of the show that never ends. All right, application for use of town green gazebo. There is an application from the Thayer Memorial Library. Ms. Turner, as you're putting together any questions, would you mind if Jason reads this so you can focus
I
on that?
move to approve the Thayer Memorial Library applicant for the annual summer concert series hosted by the Friends of Thayer Memorial Library to be held on the following dates: 6/28/23, 7/5, 7/12, 7/19, 7/26, August 2nd, 2023. From 6:30 to 8 p.m., the band will set up approximately at 5:30 p.m. Story time every Mondays and Thursdays during the summer, to held in the gazebo starting at 10:30 a.m. for ages 0
Well,
to 5, and caregivers.
pregnant mothers, I suppose. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any conversation, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Ms. Turner?
Aye.
Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Mr. Kerrigan? Aye. Communications. This will be a shock to everyone in this room, but there's an annual town meeting that's going to be held on Wednesday, May 3rd, 2023, beginning at 7 p.m. at the Mary Rowlandson School. Also, additional shock, there'll be an annual town election that will be held in this room on Monday, May 8th, 2023, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at Town Hall Auditorium. There are no miscellaneous correspondence and memoranda. We have 9 minutes left. Ms. Turner, if you have any questions about the FY24 operating budget?
I actually have a question that I was going to ask as I was looking at this under new business, which I know is not on the agenda.
Well, new business is the section we're in right now.
Oh.
Section 3 is new business. So we have no further questions. I want to button that up if need be. So if there are no further questions on the FY24 operating budget. Yes?
No, not right now.
So yes, there are no more questions. Awesome. Does the board have any further matter to bring before the board?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Do you have any further to bring before the board in this meeting, or we can
Just for
adjourn
new
until the-
business, I think, I don't know how it happened, I guess it was probably inadvertent, because I know we all want to follow our bylaws and be transparent, but we used to have section 2 as provided for on page 6 of our bylaw.
What's the question?
We felt section 2 of the agenda is stated that it should be, that we should have public comment.
Yep.
And I've noticed that it had fallen off, so
Okay.
I thought just if we could make an effort to make sure that it gets on unless there's any objection to it, and then we can revise the bylaw if it's,
It was just not on tonight
Yeah.
because this is a public forum where it's
okay.
theoretically all public comment.
Yeah, it was just like for this meeting, but okay.
Okay,
That would be great. And
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Quick question. So
Sure.
this says that there's a public forum at 6. So
6
do we
p.m.
keep the meeting open, or do we adjourn and then go to the public forum?
We adjourn this meeting and then a public forum opens, or is the public forum part of the meeting?
Correct.
Forum's part.
Okay,
You can
so
just recess.
let's move to, is there a motion to recess until 6 p.m.?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All's in favor? Aye.
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 We're in recess. Okay, good. We are back, and we will do better for those in the room at putting the mic and speaking directly into the mic. Thank you. We are only as good as the tips we get, so we appreciate the tips. All right, so Kate, I know we are going to review the 21, is it, warrant articles for the annual town meeting for May the 3rd. As everyone knows, this is a practice we began at some point in the last year, I don't remember, to give folks a more in-depth, like, what are you voting on when you get to town meeting, and give you a chance to ask detailed questions so that you're not going into town meeting and just being faced with a lot of words in a warrant or on a screen or being spoken to you. So the effort is to inform, and we hope that if you're not in this room or watching right now, that you'll watch at another time and be as informed as possible. And so in the interests of, as we do with the select board meetings, if there is someone who is supposed to present in our meeting present long before their time to present, we try to call on them and give them an opportunity to do so. So we're asking Mr. Williston, who is sponsoring an article on the size of the select board. It's a citizen's petition that was added to the town meeting warrant. We are asking, or giving him the opportunity to go first. Again, this presentation will be roughly what you see at town meeting. And I'm going to vamp a little bit longer until we're set with the slides. How's everybody's day going? I got poison ivy this weekend. And the fact that I got poison ivy made your day? That's not very nice. Oh.
All right, thank you.
Okay. I bet you all wish it was before you heard about the poison ivy, but now we are ready. Russ, I'm told if you can hold the microphone as close to your mouth as possible, maybe test it out for our folks in the audience.
Does that sound okay?
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
So this is actually Article 21. This will be the last article at town meeting. Thank you for letting me jump ahead and presenting it first. So Article 21 is a citizen's petition to expand the select board to 5 members. And it actually just starts a 3-step process that will take about 2 years. So a positive vote on this article at town meeting actually just authorizes the select board to request legislation that would let Lancaster expand its select board. So if you approve this at town meeting, sometime after that, the selectmen would request that the legislature adopt a special act for us. And then in 2024, you would see it on the ballot. So you would go in to vote at the town election, and you would see a yes or no question to accept the legislation. And then, if you do that, if you approve that in 2024, in 2025, you'd have the opportunity to expand the select board. You'd pick the extra selectmen. Next slide. So how many selectmen do we currently have? We have 3. And state law lets us have either 3, 5, or 7. And of the 292 communities with a select board in Massachusetts, 143, including us, have 3. 148 have 5. That's including Clinton, Harvard, Hudson, Lunenburg, and Stowe. And there's 1 community with 7. Next slide. This isn't on the slide, but if you're curious how we compare to those communities, of the towns with 3, there are 143, and we actually have a larger population than 113 of them. And then of the towns that have 5, they range from a population of 2454 up to the largest town that uses a town form of government with 63,191. We're actually larger than 36 of the towns that have 5 selectmen. So as to why we should make this change now, like as we just talked about, we have the population to support it. We have engaged residents. I mean, you see that on the ballots. Some of the committees we've formed in the last couple of years, we've had an abundance of people appear for them and not been able to put them all to work. So we have the opportunity to expand the select board and put more residents to work for us. And then there are a couple technical reasons that you might want to do this. With 3 members, any 2 members is a quorum. So outside of a meeting, they're not allowed to work together. They can't they can't get together with a partner and work on something between meetings. It would be an open meeting violation if they talk about anything that's town business between meetings. With 3 members, it also takes a unanimous vote to approve a special permit. So right now, if you go to the select board and you want to get an earth products permit, just 1 vote is enough to blackball your permit application. So that's a little intimidating if you're coming before the board for a permit. And finally, most boards in town already have 5 members. On the slide there, I mentioned that there are a few with 3, and of the 3 I listed there, the Cultural Council actually has more than 3. I was corrected last time I showed this slide. So there aren't too many that still have 3 members. Next slide, please. What will you see if you approve this question at town meeting? Next year, you'll see it on the ballot. And this is what it looked like in Milton. So the article we're using is actually repurposed from Milton when they took the steps to expand their select board. And this is the question that appeared on their ballot. Just yes or no. Do you want to accept the legislation that was approved after the town meeting? Next slide. And what would it look like in 2025 when we add more selectmen? You'd pick 3 selectmen from a list in 2025, sort of like we do for the library trustees. And of the top 3 vote getters, the top vote getter would serve a full term of 3 years, and then the second and third vote getters would serve shortened terms. So the second vote getter would serve 2 years, and the second runner-up would serve 1 year. And that would set up the rotating 3-year terms that we're accustomed to. And then after that, most years we'd elect 2 selectmen, and every 3rd year we'd elect 1. And so you think some of the previous elections where it's become a one-on-one race and one person goes home and doesn't participate in the government, we'd get to add 2 people to the select board every year. If you still have questions, we have a website. It's expandourselectboard.com. There's some frequently asked questions on there. You can see the text of the article, and there's contact links on there. And thank you. I think I can take questions if anyone has questions.
Thank you. My first question, which I can't believe I didn't have, is just about the, is it 2025 when you would add the 2 new ones? That's not the question, but I'm just trying to...
No, assuming that, like, some things can change in between. Like, it could take less
Sure.
time for
Assuming no
the
bumps in the
legislature to adopt an act for us, or we might have
Sure.
a special election somewhere and do things
Sure.
quicker. We'd probably vote on it at the next election, and then elect the selectmen in 2025.
Okay, so just assuming that the schedule is consistent. So, and now as I'm asking this question, I'm realizing that's when my term is up. So maybe this works out well for me. But, so the person who is an incumbent select board member isn't elected to a 3-year term. They're thrown in with the other 2 people as well? Because you said the top vote getter gets the 3-year term and then the other 2. So it's not as if the 2 additional would get a, so anyway.
Yeah, so looking at the other towns who've done this, so the incumbent would still appear on that list,
Right.
but you would still be listed as an incumbent. You'd still get that tag just
Right.
because you're the incumbent office holder. And yeah, so if you received the most votes, you'd serve a full 3-year term.
But if you get 2 votes less, you get a 2-year term.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Fingers crossed. Folks, this will apply for the rest of the forum. If you have any questions for the presenters, you can go to that microphone that is directly over there on that stick and ask them from there. And state your name and address when you ask.
Linnea Lake and Survey, Main Street, Lancaster. What if you don't get 5 people who want to run?
So we wouldn't most years need, the only year we need 3 would be that first year when we need to add 3 to fill out the new terms and the term that's expiring that year. And then in the subsequent years, it would be 2. And then in every 3rd year, it would just be 1. And so I don't think we've ever had trouble raising that many candidates.
A lot of years, we only have 1 candidate because it's a thankless job.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't want to take that kind of abuse.
Yeah, no, the way it works is if a candidate is not selected by the election, it becomes a position to fill with a special election. So there'd be a special election held at some point to fill the position. Yep.
Kendra Dickinson, 402 Oatman Way, speaking as a private citizen. I'm curious as to the motivation of bringing this via special citizens petition versus working with your own government study committee to have this all talked about along with some other changes that have been talked about in town and have it be a collective effort instead of a crusade.
Oh, no, this is actually something we had talked about last year, and I think it was something we had thought about proposing last year. And so when the government study was proposed, it seemed like a vehicle to work on this, and I was on the government study committee, like she said, and I think we went from May through December we met 3 times in those 7 months, and then we've met a few times this year since then. We haven't made a whole lot of progress. I think that most of the discussion on the government study committee has been towards establishing a town charter, which the town can still do. It doesn't affect that in any way that I'm aware. And to be honest, even if the government study wanted to talk about it between now and next May, we'd still be able to discuss this and dig up data on it, because the town actually goes to the ballot and votes on it next May. So we would just be setting up an election for next May, or a vote for next May.
Okay, I want to clarify on the government study committee. I currently serve as the chair of the government study committee, and I wasn't on the board until mid-May, so I think we didn't appoint until later in the summer, and we did meet 3 or 4 times, but we are meeting at a much more regular pace now and making some good progress. So I want to thank everyone who's participated. Oh, we appointed apparently in September. So between September and December, with our schedule of meeting once a month, that 3 meetings sounds about right.
We weren't appointed in September.
Yes, we were.
Were we?
Yep.
Well,
So anyway, this is not relevant to the discussion. I just wanted to stick up for my peeps on government study. Okay. Any other questions for Article 21?
I think our first meeting was in August. So,
Okay. Any other questions for Article 21? Hearing none, thank you, Russ. We appreciate it.
All right,
We'll
thank you.
see you at the annual town meeting on Wednesday, May 3rd at Mary Rowlandson, 7 p.m. Be there, be square. All right, Kate, I believe you are now up on Article 1. Yes? Oh, do we want to do the other petitioners who are here? Do we have any other petitioners? I saw Dave walked in. There he is. Oh, you don't have any slides? Well, you don't need, look, you're dynamic enough that slides are not necessary. So why don't we, can you pull up, well, he doesn't have slides, so come right up, Dave, introduce yourself. Which article number is Mr. Murphy? Article 20, take it away. And
Hopefully.
we're asking presenters to speak as directly into the microphone as possible so the folks in the room can hear them. So you may have to pick up the microphone and hold it close to your mouth.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Murphy. I live on Vincent Ave, which is in the Spec Pond Association. And what I am proposing and what my citizens petition was for Lancaster to adopt an abutter lot sales program. Basically what this is a program that would allow the town to bypass the auction process on small pieces of land and sell them directly to an abutter. As a model for this, I've used the town of Littleton abutter sales program. This is a program that has been vetted by the state, approved, and is being used now by one of our neighboring towns. Basically, this affects only small pieces of land. The one that Littleton uses is up to 1,800 square feet, and it can be sold only to a direct contiguous abutter. This is of particular importance to people that live in the Spec Pond Association. At the time the association was formed in 1928 by Nathan Bogan, every single piece of land in the association, divided by the smaller roads, Vincent, Kinnear, Fuller, Beach Ave, every lot was 20 feet by 80 feet. So if you wanted 200 feet, you bought 10 lots. The result of this was over the years, and especially going through the Great Depression, the town foreclosed on a lot of pieces of land. So the town actually owns numerous 20, 40, 60 foot by 80 foot pieces of land in the association. Now, through my research on other matters involving the association, I have found that in some areas, even the direct ownership of who owns particular 20 by 80 foot pieces of land is in question. I have looked into several of them and was told that, no, we don't have clear title on it, even though it was foreclosed in 1938, only to go to the attorney working on it and find out, yes, they have had clear title for 10 years now. So the town really doesn't have any financial motivation to clear the title on these and put them up for direct auction where, in fact, they hardly recover their legal costs to clear the title. By allowing these lots to be sold directly to a butter, they not only are shifting some of the legal burden of that, but also removing the cost of them recording the title, transferring the deed, anything. So if 5 years down the road, some heir to somebody that passed away, 50 years ago comes up and says, hey, that's my piece of land, the town has no liability. The burden is on the person that purchased it. Now, I know the town is planning to introduce a similar program to the one that I proposed. In fact, it was brought to my attention after I had my petition signed. I would like to see mine go through because I am using the town of Littleton's program as a clear template as to what would be considered an abutter and how to proceed with this. And the reason I'm concerned about even what would be considered an abutter, my personal experience with the Zoning Board of Appeals was it took them 3 meetings to determine that a tenant renting a room next to a piece of land was not an abutter. So by using the town of Littleton's template and having our town of Lancaster send that to the state and say, this is what we want to do, it will streamline the process. You're using a process that the legislature won't come back and want to make modifications on, and I think it will make the process a lot easier. The program that Littleton uses also sets a fixed amount of money that can be sold per square foot of the land, and it's reasonable. And the purpose of this land is not to promote development or whatever. It's basically, and especially in the Spec Pond Association, almost everyone that upgrades their septic system has to get some kind of a variance. So this just gives them a little more room to work with. So it benefits the town by getting rid of the surplus land. It benefits us in the Spec Pond Association, and who knows how many other pieces of land like this might be next to your house or your house where you could use it for a garden or a garage or something like that. So I think this is a win-win for everyone. So I'd like to see people vote in favor of my citizens' petition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions? Hold your microphone close to your mouth, please.
Thank you so much for bringing the citizens petitions forward, the citizen petition forward. I'd like to ask, I know that the town has a sponsored abutters article also.
Right.
I'd like to ask why, I want to make sure this comes out the right way, why you prefer yours over the town's? Like what do you see as the difference and why do you think yours is more desirable?
Okay, what I see as different is mine has fully been vetted by the state as an approved program, and quite honestly, I don't know how long it's going to take the town to come up with their own plan, and as I said, I sat through 3 ZBA meetings where they couldn't determine that a tenant renting a room wasn't in fact an abutter. So by doing this, I don't know if the correct way to say is it gives less opportunity to screw around with it, but it's something that ain't broken, why fix it?
So just to paraphrase, it sounds like it's to help, you prefer to remove a little, in your opinion, some bureaucracy, and as well as you believe it is already vetted by a different town. Is that accurate?
I know for a fact it's already vetted by a different town. This is in use, and I have a copy of this which was included with my petition. I'll leave my copy with you if you'd like, but this is in use by the town of Littleton, which means the state has approved it.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
David Millette, 2748 North Main Street. So you said yours is limited to 1,800 square foot lots?
According to the town of Littleton template.
Dave, if you could use the microphone, because folks,
According to
it's feast or famine with you on the mic.
according
Dave.
to the town of Littleton's template, it was 1,800 square feet. Now, the town of Lancaster could put in whatever they wanted, but that's what they recommend as a template.
And you're sure that the state will approve whatever we say?
I cannot be assured of that. I would think, and I hate to use the word assume, but if they approved Littleton's formula of 1,800 feet, I don't see why they would not approve Lancaster's. Now, Lancaster might want to say 2,800 feet.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say is maybe, I mean, have you looked at all these lots in Spec Pond? Are they all 1,800 minus 1,800 square foot lots?
Every lot that was originally sold in the Spec Pond Association originally was 20 by 80 feet. And as I said, if you wanted to buy 10 lots, you would have 200 by 80 feet. Now, the town owns several lots at 40 feet. They own a couple at, I think, 100 feet almost. If they wanted to expand the size of that, that would be fine with me. I don't know what the largest, well, actually, I do know what the largest piece. The town of Lancaster owns 9 acres at the end of Spec Pond Ave, which is Fire Road number 8, which also was seized for non-payment of taxes in the late 30s. But as far as the actual land in the association, I think there might be a few that are larger than 20 feet. In fact, I know there is at least one that's larger. There's, I mean, the town could pick whatever size they wanted.
Now I believe you also said that Littleton has a preset number
That's correct. In their
per
program,
square foot?
in their program, they use 1,800 square feet as the template.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean I thought you were saying that there was a preset number of a price per square foot.
Yes, Littleton charges $1 per square foot.
So that's never gonna, if they're not really seeking any kind of a market rate.
Littleton isn't.
Yes.
The whole idea behind this is not to sell the land at market rate. The town could sell these lots once they cleared title at auction, which in the 22 years I've been here, I have seen 2 town auctions. And what this, at least in my opinion, does is somewhat discourages bigger money from the wealthier side of the lake from coming in and spending $20,000 on a lot so they have a place to park their boat. I think most people, at least in the association, would rather see that lot go to the person next door so they can put in a garden or expand their septic system. Right now, the way it is, if the town decides to sell a piece of land, they go through the auction process. Anyone can bid on that.
Right, but the town's about to work on an override and $1 a square foot seems like a very low number for viable land.
In many cases, from what I've seen, it has cost the town more in legal fees, preparation fees, to sell these smaller pieces of land, especially an 1,800 square foot piece of land. So it's a money-losing proposition for the town.
Okay.
Now, if the town wanted to sell their 9 acres at the end of the road, I'm sure they could make, several hundreds of thousands of dollars on that, and I'm not suggesting they sell that at $1 a square foot.
Do you have any further questions about this particular
Well,
article?
just that if the price per square foot was changed, would the state still approve it?
I have no idea. That would be up to the state legislation, which I believe is voting on these things.
And this is important to note, too, that this is, this along with the town has one that I'm sure we'll hear about soon, that'll be considered at the same town meeting. This program either version is a policy that can only be set by this board, so this would be advisory to us to make decisions. And we have to get our definition of what an abutter is, not from the town of Lunenburg or Littleton, but from our assessors, ZBA, et cetera. So there'll be a lot more work that has to be done, which is why we have a second version of this very same item coming up. But any other questions for Mr. Murphy? Thank you, Mr. Millette.
Mine's a better plan.
Okay. Today's about facts, Dave, not opinions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Kate, would you like to do our version of that? Why don't we just, we're just jumping all around, everybody. Which number? Article number 13, folks. For those of you jumping around your ballot bingo card.
So, hi there, I'm Kate Hodges, the town administrator, and I like to do things in order, so now I'm all messed up.
My
We're
apologies.
starting on 13. So the idea behind this actually does predate Dave's petition in that we were talking about holding an auction back in June. And of that, we wanted to separate out the abutter lot program. Incidentally, I used to work for the town of Littleton, so I'm very familiar with the ins and outs of that. I was also working for the town when that was going through the process. So it's interesting that that's the one that was picked by Mr. Murphy, but there's lots of them. And the thing to I guess to keep in mind is that, again, this is a policy decision, as Chairman Kerrigan said, and it also is community specific. So the idea was to have the select board come up with parameters where the town could sell to abutters town-owned vacant and unbuildable lots valued at a certain amount of a certain size. And I think that those need to be determined by the community. Whether that holds up the process, I guess, is a matter of concept, but we have regulatory boards in place with elected and appointed officials whose business it is to opine on these types of things, including the dollar amount per square foot. So the program would be administered, I believe, obviously through the board for policy setting, but through the assessor in the treasurer's office, with the overall goal of the program to reduce blighted conditions in neighborhoods and allow existing property owners to increase their properties and return those properties to our tax rolls. Once the program parameters are established by the regulatory boards in town, that program would then go to the legislature. And then what would happen is each year that we have a list of parcels, those parcels would be brought to annual town meeting, and the community would vote to have those parcels declared as surplus and then available to the abutter program. So it's a little bit different than Littleton because we're different than Littleton, we're different than every other 380 plus community in the Commonwealth. So you can determine on your own what's better or not, but I think the plan from the town's end is to have the boards and committees that are of the town, from the town, determine both the values and the parameters set in order to take advantage of the program. The goal would be the same, which is to take vacant properties and return them to places where they can be used and then put back on the tax rolls. In that we agree.
Fantastic. Any questions for Ms. Hodges about Article 13? Mr. Allison.
You may want to get back up there, Ms. Hodges. So we heard the citizen speak to why they liked their article better. I mean, why I'm asking these questions is the residents are going to be presented two super similar petitions, and I just want to give both of you an opportunity to talk about why we think one is better with a little bit of detail. So can you speak to, in your opinion, why you believe this article is more in service for the residents of Lancaster?
Sure. The answer to that question is I don't know whether it's better or not, because I want the boards and committees that are elected and appointed by this community to determine the parameters, not just to adopt parameters set by another community. That's the bare bones of it. On the surface as well, we can't just take Littleton's and pass it off and put Lancaster's name on it. That wouldn't pass by the legislature. There needs to be a series of public hearings that are done at both the assessor's level and either the planning or ZBA or the select board, depending on who's going to be the champion for the project. So as much as if Mr. Murphy's passes, which is fine, it would be advisory back to the board, and the board could use that as a template, but that doesn't mean that a group of citizens wouldn't come and say, I don't want $1 per square foot, I want it to be $5 a square foot, and then that has to be debated. So there's a series of regulatory things that isn't as simple as it passes and we just put, every time it says Littleton, put Lancaster on it. It needs to be specific to this community.
So if I were to paraphrase, your version allows it to go directly back to the boards for them to consider and make recommendations, the elected and appointed boards, and that is what the differentiator between the two articles.
Correct, and admittedly is not as fully baked as one that has already been through the legislature and is in process.
Thank you.
Any further questions on Article 13? Mr. Millett. You can move your microphone down if you want.
David Millette, 2748 North Main Street. Would this be limited to non-buildable lots?
The idea would be yes, but that's also a matter that can be up for discussion.
Thank you. Any further questions on Article 13? Dave? Questions get asked from the microphone.
No problem.
First of all, you mentioned that the town
Dave,
is...
Dave,
You're mentioning that the town
No,
is considering
Dave,
another
Dave,
auction?
Dave, excuse me. Name and address.
Oh, Dave Murphy, 36 Vincent Ave, Lancaster. You mentioned the town is considering another auction coming up. Would this, while these are being considered, put a hold on that auction?
Well, so I want to be clear. These are quick questions relative to the article, not...
That's what I'm asking. While the articles are being considered, does that mean that an open auction is now on hold?
Correct. The open auction isn't something, we are not in a financial position right now to be able to do that. So we're holding off until next fiscal year. So regardless, this will be taking place before that. And so those will be separate.
Second question, if both are approved, would two separate things be sent to the legislature, or would it be merged into one?
We already have an auction process that has been blessed, so we would just remove these parcels from that, and that would be a separate, but we already have something, so the only thing for the town auction that would need is the map numbers of the parcels needs to go to the next annual town meeting.
Okay, my final question would be, and I know this is just a guess, what kind of time frame do you think you would be talking about while the town put together something to send to the state? Are we talking months or years?
Well, I don't know, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, depending on what comes out of the town meeting, then we have to consult with other boards and commissions in town, come up with a policy that's relative to this program, and then move the ball forward from there. But it's never this board's intention to take action from the town meeting and sit on it. So my assumption is we will work on it with as much haste as possible, but there are processes that have to take place.
Okay,
and then we
great.
have to go before the legislature within their time frame and not ours.
Okay, thank you very much.
And it's important to note the legislature accepts new acts and whatnot at the beginning of the session and rarely in the middle. So I would suspect this would take a little bit, but not years. Months perhaps to get it together and out there. But okay. Do we now want to start at the very beginning? It's a very good place to start. Everybody? No? Sound of music? Nobody? Okay, great. You would have gotten extra points if you started singing. No? Nobody? Okay. All right.
Do, re, mi.
That's why we have a limited number of microphones, so we don't pick it all up. That's a different movie. Different movie. All right. Ms. Hodges.
Okay.
Article 1.
Article 1 is the FY24 budget. Again, I just want to reiterate some logistics here. The budget, as it is right now, is not going to be voted upon at town meeting because we're asking for a Proposition 2.5 override vote. That will be a ballot vote taken right in this room on the annual election, which is on May 8th. Polls open at 7 a.m., they close at 8 p.m. That said, we will be going through the full slate of slides regarding the budget, and people will be able to ask questions and hopefully receive answers. And if the town moderator changes his mind and would like to have a vote, it will be a paper ballot done similarly to the paper ballot process that we did last January for those who attended that. And we would spell that out very clearly before the meeting, and you would be issued your ballots at check-in. So by now, I think it's safe to say that folks are aware that in order to balance our budget the next fiscal year, we need an operational override, also referenced as a Prop 2.5, in the amount of $1.2 million. Although the potential for an override became apparent early on, town staff and members of the various boards and committees and schools have been working for more than 10 months to put together a budget discussed at last month's joint Select Board and Finance Committee meeting. With a confirmed deficit currently averaging about $1.2 million after all cuts and cost savings have been exhausted, We yield to the voters on May 8th to determine what they believe, you believe, is best for Lancaster, both today and moving forward. Put simply, the services that we have today, including our excellent schools, robust before and after school activities and clubs, 24/7 police patrols, ability for multiple officers and firefighter EMTs to respond to calls, in-town fire EMS services, our in-town ambulance, health, human service, and social work advocacy, our awesome library, and our exceptional recreation programs are all take more taxpayer money to sustain than the current levels of revenue that we're bringing in. If the town values these functions and wants these services to remain as they have been, an unfortunate but necessary override needs to take place. Like I said, the budget process began last June with capital planning requests totaling in excess of $4 million. And as we stand here today, the fiscal year 24 budget proposal does not include any appropriations for capital within the levy. In terms of operations and the general fund, the initial deficit projection was more than $1.9 million. So that was our starting point 10 months ago, nearly $2 million short. It was clear that in order to correct and stabilize Lancaster's finances, an operational override needed to be proposed. The question was, how low could we get the override number, and what did we have to cut or rethink to do so? So please understand, we've cut. We have thought outside the box, we've combined services, we've cut staff positions, we've combined staff positions, we've reduced the town's full-time equivalents by 3. The school has reduced their full-time equivalents by 7. Statements to the contrary are more than flawed, and I would encourage people to watch the meetings, watch the deliberations, read the information from the past 10 months, and see where we were versus where we are. That said, hopefully you've been able to review the new budget book, which went online in February. If you have or plan to, this table can be found on page 34 and provides a truncated version of the town's revenues in green and the expenses in red. Next year, Lancaster's projected revenues equal $26.1 million, while expenses total more than $27.2 million. That is the override and what it seeks to recover. $1.2 million needed to close the gap. So why not use free cash or stabilization? Excellent question, and one that I've gone into greater detail about than I will tonight. However, the abridged version is depicted here with the town's total free cash position since 2019. The green line represents the account balance, and the orange line is the town's use of those funds. As you can see, over the past many years, we've built up free cash only to spend it either in part or in total in order to balance our budget. In short, we have been spending more than we've been bringing in for years. To use an analogy provided to me earlier today, this is similar to a person who makes $1,000 a month spending $1,200 a month. Eventually you run out of savings or you max out your credit cards. Last year, the town used a little more than $760,000 from free cash to balance this year's budget. This effectively depleted our reserves. This is why the line appears so close together compared with years past. We're running out of savings. Additional use of free cash will further erode Lancaster's credit rating and ultimately our ability to fund capital projects at affordable and reasonable rates. Ultimately, lower bond and credit ratings result in higher interest rates, and for Lancaster, this is particularly problematic as we, in conjunction with the other 2 towns of the Neshoba district, contemplate a new high school facility and how to finance that. The town didn't come to this conclusion lightly, nor are our financial circumstances the results of something that happened overnight. So why this year? It's often asked, and the answer is multifaceted. Beyond what I just described relative to the use of reserves, and just as homeowners have seen increases in their energy, utility, and personal expenses, so has the town. Municipal expenses not related to personnel have risen 19.5% from last year, and they directly correlate to the increases nationwide in energy, fossil fuels, building, roadway, and construction material costs. Our school population is also increasing. New growth is the term we use to describe the additional money which the town collects from permits, fees, and other assessments. These are fees that have not previously been connected to any tax bill. And when setting our new growth estimates, communities are only permitted to use a number consistent with the previous year. We originally had 100. We actually got to 200,000 based on some infrastructure improvements that are happening in North Lancaster, but it is not a windfall. Neshoba's district assessment is based in part on a 5-year rolling average, which has increased over time. These tables are taken directly from the district's budget book and show that Lancaster's student enrollments have jumped 0.25% since 2021, while the other district towns decreased by nearly the same amount. Put plainly, there are more Lancaster children in the schools, and we must adjust the assessment amounts in order to appropriately educate them. Minuteman's assessment for Lancaster is based upon a 4-year rolling average, and Lancaster has also seen an increase in the number of students attending Minuteman from town. The percentage change last school year to this one is more than 5%. These shifts in enrollment led to an increase in assessment for FY24. Minuteman's proposed budget for FY24 totals $25.5 million. Lancaster's assessment equals $2.4 million, or an increase of about $200,000. What happens if the override doesn't pass? I realize this issue is one that carries an emotionally charged response, so I'm hopeful you will take this information in the spirit in which it's intended, because the town staff and I have been working very hard over this past year to answer this question in the most honest and responsible way possible. Simply put, the town is required to have a balanced budget on or before the first of the fiscal year. So if the override doesn't pass, we will have to cut the amount necessary to achieve balance. The amount is $1.2 million. I have yet to come across an individual who has an idea of where or how to cut $1.2 million. That amount cannot be achieved without cuts to the schools. I've heard people say that we have to pay the schools, which is correct, we do, but not without an appropriation to do so. What do the schools cut? I can't say. But please know that I've had conversations with both Minuteman and Neshoba superintendents, and that this is not a foregone conclusion, nor is it likely that it may or may not pass, and they will have to revisit their budgets as well. This slide has some of the ways which we could achieve balance, and the cuts are significant. For police, it would mean the cancellation of overnight patrols, decreases in multiple officer duties, delayed response time for emergencies, and the inability to adequately handle criminal investigations and community policing efforts. Cuts to fire and EMS would include personnel, resulting in longer response times and declining mutual aid responses. It would also include the discontinuance of the town-operated ambulance services, which would require contracts with private providers at an increased cost to residents and patients. For public works, there would be reductions to operational and material budgets, causing the abandonment of proactive road treatments, limited snow removals, little to no storm pre-treatments, truncated pothole and roadway repairs, limited tree maintenance, and stormwater catch basin clean-out program disbandment. The library would have cuts to staffing and programming, resulting in ineligibility to participate in interloan programs and significant hours of operation and withdrawal of free programs and events. In terms of health and human services, residents would see reductions to social work hours, the discontinuance of transitional and assistance and outreach efforts for seniors, cuts in our rideshare and transportation programming, the cancellation of recreation opportunities, and the closure of the town beach and the splash pad. Other areas cut from town government would come from conservation and planning, which would lead to longer permanent application times, decreased ability to handle regulatory board business, decreases in in-person business hours. There would be possible interruptions to town meeting and election oversight due to the town clerk's office being understaffed, and decreased administration relative to vital records, assessing, treasury, payroll, and state reporting. Lastly, and this is important, please note that these cuts are not one-year cuts. These are forever. This is because if we don't raise and appropriate the amount needed to sustain the operation, we cut. And that doesn't fix the problem, it exacerbates it. So without an override to correct the imbalance this year, the town deficit only grows. The authority to boost the tax dollars effectively allows a catch-up with the rates of inflation these past 10 years. Without this, next year we will be back here in the same situation with a higher override number, which we've projected to be anywhere between 1.75 to 1.83 million. At that time, there'll be no other staff to cut. There'll be no programs and operations left. And that won't make up the 1.75 plus deficit. That's state receivership. That's real. I have heard and read online in the paper that all over that folks don't believe these cuts will happen. So I want to be clear that they will, either in part, in total, or in some fashion like it. I've heard that folks advocate for the use of free cash and ARPA funds, and I've explained that that only solves the issue for 1 year, but that next year's deficit will grow more, and we won't be in a position not only to fund the school and pay that balance, but also we won't be in a position to have any reserves. The amount of interest will more than double what the override this year will do. In terms of implications to the average taxpayer, a $1.2 million override adds between $425 to $515 annually to the average single-family home, valued between $450,000 and $550,000. The number is not insignificant. This slide shows the text of the question that you will see on the ballot. You will answer yes to allow the override or no to disallow it. This vote is important, of that there is no doubt. But the results of this question also serve as a statement for how Lancaster residents and their families want to live. It is a deeply personal choice. And while I cannot imagine anyone's personal financial situation, I ask that you please take the time to speak with the staff, to speak to me, to look at the information on the website, to familiarize yourself with how we got here, and correct the incorrect information and provide factual information that is contained in the hundreds of pages of documents and dozens of hours of meeting times which this situation has explored. Your vote should be what you believe is the right decision for Lancaster, because in the end, the results will frame how the town moves forward as a community and the levels of service you can rely on long after May 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Kate. Although I feel bad because you sat down, and if there's any questions, you're going to have to stand back up. Any questions for Ms. Hodges? Come to the microphone, state your name and address, please.
George Franz, 13 Highfield Drive. I don't question the probity of the override vote. I will personally support it. But I have this question. If you go back about 2 years, the tax rate in Lancaster was 19.8 per thousand, and now is, what, 17.3? So if we had not changed the tax rate, if we had not decreased the tax rate, would we be still looking at the need for an override?
Someone else asked this very question, and I am going to defer to the expert.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Garapi, Finance Director for the town. We didn't decrease. We didn't just up and say, okay, we don't like 1948, we're going to lower it to 17. We paid off the school borrowing of $650,000, and that equated to a 65-cent drop in your tax rate. That is why the rate dropped. So the money was never there to begin with. You were putting the money in for the school debt payment. You finished paying it, and now it goes away.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Okay.
Excellent
Thank you,
question.
George. Any further questions? Any further questions from the audience? Sure.
I wasn't
On
I
the
don't expect
article?
anything.
Sorry, the board knows me as an antagonist for the fire roads.
We know
but
you
that's
as a
not.
dedicated
Yes,
townsperson.
I am.
But you need to state your name and your address.
Okay, my name's David Murphy, 36 Vincent Ave in Lancaster. Just a quick question, and I think I know the answer, but when the assessments go up, does that not bring in more revenue, or is it somehow adjusted?
Sure. So what happened this year is it was a reval year, and so yes, the assessments went up, but our tax rate is lower,
Yeah,
as
okay.
Cheryl just explained. So while some people have seen an increase in their taxes, certainly, based on revals, other people have seen decreases. But what we can only do is deal with the tax rate ahead of us. So It grew by, maybe 2.5% to 3%, but it's not.
Okay, no, that makes sense. And the next thing I just want to say is, I'm an antagonist about the fire roads and everything. However, we've complained for years that the town wasn't going in the direction that we wanted. You've heard me say I think you are a breath of fresh air. I think the board is great. So maybe it's time that we stop complaining, or I'll still complain a little bit more, but give you guys the tools you need to do the job we're asking you to do. So I will vote for,
Today is a win.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you,
Okay.
Dick. Can we shut it down?
Yes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
On that note, I am going to leave.
That is a mic drop moment.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions from the audience before I go to the board? Anybody other than Jason? Anybody? No, okay, sorry.
Yeah,
Mr. Allison.
I can't follow Mr. Murphy. That's not possible. So I just want to, already said this, just want to recap succinctly. Is there any capital in this budget?
No.
And if we spend all of our free cash and stabilization is also cut down, what will that mean to our bond rating should there be a decision to build a new school, and how will that impact residents financially?
Sure. So I had done the numbers, and I didn't bring that folder, so I'm going to use rounded numbers. But effectively, when we were looking at what it would cost to borrow about $40 million, so to finance $40 million, which would be Lancaster's share of what is the proposed design that was chosen by the committee for the high school. The rate that we got, we are a AAA 3 community, was a little under 6%, which on its own is not a great rate, but it would be manageable. It would be difficult, but it would be manageable. That was based on the reserves and the stabilization accounts that we have now, and the ability for the town to showcase that we're on a path where we can sustain our operations, not just year after year, but future, so for future planning, which is why in one of the meetings I did that's how we got to the point where we said 1.2 will likely get us through to FY28. That's why we did it that way. And so the idea would be that if we don't have those things, then the credit rating lowers, and to go to either a AA or a AAA 1, which is 1 or 2 steps lower, you're talking about 8 to 9%, and that is sort of a best case scenario. So when we did that out, it was a difference of about $800 for the average taxpayer. So what I was trying to articulate is that while we're talking about anywhere from $41 or $35 to $45 a month for this override, depleting our resources has an impact that's at least 2 times that.
Yeah, you're doing an excellent job with the details. I'm not that smart, so I'm going to paraphrase here, but what I'm hearing you say is a no to the override, and if it doesn't pass, the school will cost us twice as much.
Yes, but
Cool.
Give or take, yes.
Give or take a couple points. I don't want to ask Chief Hansen to come up, but another part I want to rehash is if we do not have the fire department response time, which I believe is currently 8 minutes, and if that goes to, I think, something like 22 minutes, every resident should fully expect to have an increase in their insurance rates for their property. And while we don't have those exact numbers, I believe that could be expected in hundreds of dollars. Is that accurate?
Yes, it would.
Kate's playing the role of Phil Donahue today. Passing the microphone on.
Yeah, I like
Phil
this.
Donahue, right? Remember him?
Yes, it would be with the increased response time and the inability to do our annual services that are required. It would bring the ISO rating up. I can't give you an exact number because each insurance company would set their own rate. So it could be $100, it could be $600 a year. It's whatever they want to charge.
Awesome, thank you, Chief. And I don't believe I see Mr. Muley here, but he expressed the concern over getting certified for a state, and we would be the only functioning library in the state of Massachusetts who wasn't certified, which doesn't sound like a good thing. The other part, he said, is we would not be able to apply for grants, and that was a big impact for the town. So what I'm trying to convey to all residents is that a no, you may believe that you're saving money, but in reality, it may end up costing everyone more in the long term. So however you choose to vote, and I hope it's a yes, but however you choose to vote, please consider that as you go to vote. Thank you.
So I will add only one comment to what you just said, in that it may not add to their cost in the future. It will add to their cost in the future. So it is not something that is unforeseen, that if a no vote happens, the cost will be significant to the town and to the taxpayers. Mr. Millett?
Dave Millett, 2748 North Main Street. And so I've just seen some people that were definitely against the override, and one of the things they expressed was, I just thought it should be out here, even though I am personally for it, as being the responsible way to go. They were asking whether or not, if there was a no vote on the override, if police and fire could be kept, and yet cuts could be made from other departments only, including somebody who suggested a total closure of the library for 3 years.
Oh, my. So if the override doesn't pass, the onus falls back on my office with the select board to come up with policy decisions relative to how to produce and present a balanced budget to the state by 7/1. So I would think all of those things are on the table. Just on its surface, I'm not quite sure how, as a community, we would just decide to target one important piece of the community and close that. But you know, I think certainly we would have to discuss those things.
Mr. Allison?
Yeah, Mr. Millett, I just want to make a comment. From a leadership perspective, any resident who engages in conversations with other residents, ask them what their plan is. In my opinion, it would be irresponsible to vote no without having a specific plan. A vote no and then coming up with a plan puts not only all staff at risk, it puts all residents at risk. And I think Kate can probably describe it better, but the second that vote goes, can you speak to that? The second that the vote doesn't pass, what that means for the town?
Yeah, so what the vote is the budget that begins July 1st. So we would have between May 9th and June 30th to come up with a balanced budget. We've presented, which I did sort of the highlights of what that was, and that was our ability from the administration to spread the cuts over everything. If it's determined that the cuts should not be spread as widely as we have, that's a policy decision, and certainly one that would be up for discussion. But I would come back to the board with a budget that is reduced by 1.2, and it includes the assessments to Neshoba, Minuteman, and then the cuts that I just sort of did the bullet points on.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Streeter?
Frank Streeter, speaking as a library trustee. Just a few points about the library.
Your address.
135 Bull Hill Road.
Thank you.
Also, right over there at the library. So people need to understand the library raises about 20% of its budget on its own, which includes significant state aid, which has to come from being certified. Additionally, you can't just close the library, turn off the lights, and walk away. There's a significant amount of maintenance and work that has to be done on a building like that, so you can't zero out that budget. But referring to Kate's previous comment about an awesome library, which it is, what makes the library as awesome as it is its staff. If you close the library for a period, you will lose all of that staff. You will equivalently find it very difficult to hire replacements. So I would just stress Mr. Allison's comment that pay it now or pay more later. paying it now is better. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. And I want to be very clear that it is not the position, at least of this board member, and this board is not taking a position to target anyone in particular, that we're grateful that the town, the leadership of the town administrator and all the department heads have come up with what would be draconian cuts to our budget with this, should the override fail. But I don't want anyone to leave this room or watch on television thinking that we are contemplating closing the library. All the points that Frank brought up. Also, because of all those things, I would caution that I'm not even sure that would make up the delta that we would need anyway, but it is not something that we are contemplating at this time. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Real quick, I've been trying to finish this research up, and I haven't been able to complete it, but I'll share with what I have. The Lancaster town talking about an override is not new. I found it as far back as 2018. Finance Committee and Select Board trying to figure out if now's the right time. And Kate's graph is very interesting because it basically says, okay, should we use stabilization, back and forth. So I would encourage every resident who may feel that this is new to them, even in this last year, to do a little bit of reading and go back a little bit, because it's not new, it's just something we've been trying to avoid. But to the point I think that was made by Mr. Streeter is now is the time that we need to do this. Thank you.
Yes. Sir, state your name and address.
Joe Duramo, 127 Harvard Road. So as I understand it, the override warrant article will be discussed but not voted on at town meeting.
That's correct.
So I have some concerns about that because the people who attend town meeting will be well informed. They'll hear all of this discussion and more. And if their overwhelming support is not documented, how will the people who go to the voting booth sense, the pulse of the town and know, what's best based on the people that are most informed at town meeting? I'm concerned about not having that vote take the tally of the support for this override.
So, we had a select board meeting before this, and Ms. Turner brought that up as well. So I'm going to talk with the moderator again. It's not our choice, but I would certainly bring that feedback back to him.
I know it's complicated to do a ballot.
We can do it.
But we have
found a way to.
It's worth doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I appreciate that comment. It is an arcane bit of town government in that the town meeting itself is run by the town moderator. It is his or her meeting, his and in our case, he made the determination, but we're going to bring feedback to him as we do from time to time, and I think it's important. The issue comes, so say for some reason the people who go to town meeting don't vote for the budget and then approve the override, their vote is basically circumvented by what happens at the override, because it's a little trickier than that, but we're definitely going to raise that concern to the moderator, and thank you. I appreciate you raising it. Any further questions for
Just on that, Mr. Chair, is just one of the things that the moderator discussed is he didn't want people to believe that because they voted at town meeting, they didn't need to vote on Monday. So if you have any ideas about how to, other than we'll announce it at the meeting more than once.
Yes.
I'm not quite sure. I just, there's a lot of preconceived notions.
Yes. Does anyone see a hand up in this room? Yeah. Any questions from the audience first? Okay. Mr. Allison, do you have a question?
I just wanted to comment on Mr. Duramo.
We have 17 more articles. Just want to point that out.
It's a really good point. And how I think about that is the town election is also very important. And if residents don't go to town election informed, then they're not acting in best service to the town. So I think I would envision a Lancaster where every resident who goes to vote at any election has all of that information. So a lot of onus gets put on us, but a lot of onus gets put on our residents also. It's the culture that we want in town, to be informed and make the best choice we have, and then democracy reigns. So I get your point, and I'm on board with that. Thank you.
Thank you. One more time. Any further questions on Article 1? Okay, Article 2. We're just whizzing right through these, right? Those of you keeping track at home, we're 4 down in 1 hour and 7 minutes.
So Article 2 is, will be at town meeting presented by a member of the school committee, but in the interest of time tonight, basically in 2019, it was discovered that the 8-member composition of Neshoba Regional School Committee was not in compliance with the Constitution's one-person, one-vote principle. So as a result, the committee, under the leadership of the former Bolton representative, Dr. Mary McCarthy, began the process of amending the regional agreement to achieve compliance. They went through a number of reviews, and in October of 21, the school committee created a regional agreement advisory committee to review the amendments. It's an advisory committee responsible for making recommendations to the school committee. And according to the regional agreement in MGL, the school committee itself is responsible for amending the document. So they did and voted to approve that on February 15th of 2023. They took public comment at that meeting, and on March 1st, after additional public comment and deliberation, they voted unanimously in favor of the final draft, which is located on this link. It's located on the town's website. It's located on the district's website. And there's, excuse me, also a summary of proposed changes in a table form so that you can see the topic, the current version, and the proposed version language. It's very comprehensive. A lot of it is housekeeping. Nothing fundamentally changes the agreement, rather brings us better into compliance.
Thank you, Ms. Hodges. Any questions on Article 2? Hearing none. Article 3.
Cooking. Article 3 is the revolving funds for the town. We're seeking affirmative action to appropriate the funds that are seen here on the slide. Revolving funds are not part of the town's levy. They are fees paid for services such as the money that you use to play pickleball goes into an account, and then it's used to buy pickleball supplies. But these need to be appropriated each year by a vote at town meeting. So that is essentially it. Their materials and department.
All right. Any questions for Article 3? All right. Hopping right along. Article 4. It's one after 3.
Thank you. Smart guy. Article 4 is for water main replacement. This is part of the enterprise fund, the water enterprise fund, so this is, again, not tax dollars. The maximum amount that we can borrow based on our credit rating and the reserves in the water enterprise is $4 million, which seems like a lot, but that's only 1/3 of the amount that's needed to do this portion of the project. So the interest and loan payments on this amount will be repaid from the water enterprise, which is a collection of fees paid for services and other grants. No general fund money will be used. And when we are at town meeting, Public Works Superintendent Kevin Bartlett will be there. I don't know how much I could answer today, but I will write questions down and send them to Mr. Bartlett.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Bartlett? Oh, but, I mean, you're welcome to ask a question of Kate or the board.
I seem to always ask this question at town meeting. I want to know what the balances are in the Water Enterprise Fund.
Oh.
Because that's a fee, it's based on the water fees, so why aren't we using some of that money instead of borrowing it? And what will the balances be when it's all said and done?
Do you, yep.
We will.
Wait a minute. Here.
It's my bugaboo.
I don't want to.
Gee, thanks. We spent $1 million out of the retained earnings at the last town meeting, and there's $2 million remaining in the retained earnings. So we're looking to authorize up to $4 million, and what the plan is we'll borrow in small increments as the project goes along, because with $2 million reserve, that's not going to hold us out for the $4 million, obviously.
Okay. I just think the Water Enterprise Fund's been around for about 35 years. I was related to somebody who helped implement that at the time. So I just would like to know that that's fully understood and how it works and how it's supposed to be borrowed from and the retained earnings and all that. And I don't think the town understands it.
Sure.
Because I don't remember all the details, but our water rates keep going up, and I know parts of town have horrible water.
Yes.
And I get it, because they're digging up the water lines because in front of my house, because of the road work on 117, they try to maximize, roads being dug up. But it's a complicated fund that really needs to be well explained.
Thank you.
You'll be happy to know that next
Renee,
year's...
did you do your name and
sorry.
address? Did you do your name and address?
Linnea Lake and Survey, 1394 Main Street.
There we go. Thank you.
At next year's budget book, we are hoping to include a section that has the enterprise and revolving accounts in the back. We just simply ran out of time and finger strength
With
this
perhaps
year.
an explainer.
Yes, it will. It will have, yes.
Fantastic.
Similar to-
See, your town government at work for you. All right, any questions on Article 4? Now, keep in mind she can't necessarily answer your questions on Article 4, but you can ask them if you'd like.
George Franz, 13 Highfield Drive. My question is, has the town or the water department anticipated at some point adding water and sewer up the Route 70 corridor? I mean, everybody knows it's a huge barrier to appropriate development in that area, and I would love to know what the town has in mind for the future. Thank you.
I will have to refer that
Yeah,
to
we'll
the
pass that on to
commissioners.
the
Yep.
commissioners, yes.
Yep.
All right. Oh, yes.
Sorry, through the chair, Mr. Franz, there is plans in the planning department. It has been discussed because it has been recognized as being a barrier to that. And it's a long, complicated story that I'm sure Mr. Chairman would prefer I refer to another time. Correct?
I just defer to the DPW commissioners who can explain the plan in much more detail. Thank you. Any further questions about Article 4?
That's 4, no?
Okay. Hearing none, Article 5.
Article 5 seeks authorization to raise and appropriate $125,000 for the operation, maintenance, and repairs to the municipal solar array located on the town's old landfill site off Route 170. Currently, we're paying the debt which stemmed from borrowing authorization for about $1.2 million when the solar field was being constructed. That loan will be paid off in the year 2033. However, the bond type is not like others in the traditional municipal world. This bond is called a qualifying energy bond, which is issued through the federal government, and each quarter, Lancaster's treasurer files a report with the federal government, and after it's received, we are then given the credit back. This amount has historically been under the interest amount paid for that year. The amount appropriated each year, as seen here, covers the principal and interest payments for what we borrowed, also alarm monitoring, battery, and equipment replaces as needed. And the money appropriated comes from the sale of solar renewable energy credits that are also called RECs. And those are retroactive, meaning that for 24, we'll be collecting for calendar year 23.
Any questions on Article 5? Hearing none. Article 6.
Mr. Chair, before I'm sorry, stepping back just 1 minute to Article 4, I stepped out.
Sorry, hold on. You have a question about Article 4.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure we're on the right question.
No, I stepped out briefly, so I missed some of the presentation, but did we or will we post what roads, because a lot of people have concerns.
Can you remind me what Article 4 was?
It's water main. Did the DPW or did we post a list of the roads that are anticipated to be improved, or water mains?
I will ask the superintendent.
Okay, because a lot of people are
I believe that's been,
we did discuss it.
it's been up in the air, and there were more roads than we had funding for, so it's gone through a couple of iterations, so I will ask.
Okay.
Thank
Any
you.
questions on Article 5? None. Article 6.
Article 6 is the Water Enterprise Fund, which seeks authorization to raise and appropriate $125,000 for the operation of the Water Division, which is part of the Department of Public Works. The authorization seeks permission to expend $1,108,250 for the operation of the Water Division, which is funded in the collection and appropriation of fees for services. No general fund monies are used for this operation. However, town meeting action to appropriate the funds necessary to run the division is still required. The individual appropriations are outlined here and further break down the operational needs for the division. And again, at town meeting, Superintendent Kevin Bartlett will be there along with the commissioners to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions on Article 6? Okay, hearing none. Article 7.
Article 7 seeks to change the town's personnel code, which is outdated and contains several errors and practices which are not in keeping with best practices or the law. The code is to be replaced with a new personnel bylaw, which refers back to a set of policies that are overseen and voted upon by a mixture of the select board and town meeting. The purpose of any personnel bylaw is to establish fair and equitable personnel policies, systems, and procedures which promote lawful, uniform, fair, and equitable application of policies and procedures related to our employees. This bylaw, once adopted, will allow the town to set parameters for personnel in town that complies with current human resources laws and regulations, clearly defines employee roles, responsibilities, benefits, and working conditions, and also ensures that a union employee's contract language is similar to non-union language, promoting a workplace that is inclusive, fair, and consistent. The current town code has many flaws, including several areas which remove the idea of progressive disciplinary action and allow for very part-time employees to get paid time off and other benefits that are generally associated with full-time or year-round personnel. There are no systems for time off accrual, and when their clauses are compared with that of the union language, the differences could be considered violations of the Fair Labor Standards Act, amongst other things. The Mass Equal Pay Act also took effect on July 1st of 2018, and this law provides clarity as to what may be considered lawful wage discrimination. It also adds protections and language to personnel standards that ensure greater fairness and equity in the workplace. The town code does not mention these updated laws and regulations, and further, the practices outlined in the current code are in conflict with many of these laws. Removing the outdated code allows the town to maintain many of the current procedures that are in place, but also allows us to codify and better articulate the terms and conditions for non-union employment, so there are no ambiguities relative to expectations and benefits.
Okay, any questions relative to Article 7? Okay, Article 8.
Article 8 seeks approval for the non-union classification pay scale. The table is printed in the warrant and provides a 2% cost of living adjustment for those employees who are not covered by a collective bargaining agreement or an employment contract. It's called the unclassified wage table. This is the only article that is directly tied to the override. Therefore, if the override does not pass, neither will this article. It will be rescinded.
Any questions about Article 8?
Just so people understand and make sure I'm clear, we have a step plan currently in place. So if the override doesn't pass, then people remain in their current rate or step. Is that right? Unless cuts are necessary.
Right. Well, cuts would be necessary.
Yeah.
So the step plan that you are talking about is in the personnel code, which we are looking to disband.
I understand. But
So
there
is one that exists. It's just this is the updated preferred version.
I'm not sure I understand the question. So we are hoping to come up with another plan in the personnel bylaw that has how somebody may get a step, and perhaps not only through attrition.
I understand that.
Merit-based or some other faction. So this just allows for a cost of living, period.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on Article 8? Article 9.
It's not me. You get to listen.
Oh my goodness. Who's Article 9?
You sure can. So
We are, by the way, past the halfway mark, everybody. So we're at, this will be our 12th article out of 21.
I gotta get my glasses, I can't see.
And that was quick.
Linnea Lake and Survey, 1394 Main Street. I am the chair of the Community Preservation Committee, which was put into place in 2020, enacting, what is it, Chapter 43, something of the state law, allowing Lancaster to do a 1%, we opted for a 1% surcharge to be used for historical preservation, affordable housing, and open space and recreation. So this is the first year it's coming up. Great, it'd be the same year as override. But how do I do the slides here?
So that's the other, this is just what's printed in the warrant.
Okay.
Right, that's what
Article 9 is just allocating the money that we will be collecting in this fiscal year to go into the various buckets. 10% in each of the designated areas, 5% for administration, and the bulk of it goes into the undesignated, which is 65%, which we dip into for various projects that are recommended. So that is, do you need a slide for that, or are we just gonna?
I think you're just going to talk to it, right?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I will put the motion up
Okay,
on the screen, so you
because
can
it's
say
basically just the budget.
printed in the warrant.
So that's
Okay.
Article 9.
New to this, so bear with me.
That's Article 9. Any questions on Article 9? There's more.
Well, this is the good stuff.
I know. So this is Article 10, yes?
Okay, then we move to Article 10. For the first year of collecting, we raised revenue of $157,891, rounded figures. We received from the state, which we have a community preservation trust fund from the state that is funded by the fees at the Registry of Deeds. And there are 2 rounds of funding some years. This year, we got 33% in the first round, which is $47,415, that if we didn't participate, we wouldn't have gotten. And then in November, from the state budget surplus, we got another $12,818. So a total of $60,000 from the state to use on the projects. So we had a total of $218,124 for the total fund. So the committee is responsible for soliciting the project, going out to the different boards. It's a 7-member committee, and we got 7 different projects. We voted to put forth 6 of them. And the way we're going to vote on this is they're going to be individual. They're presented together, but each project will be voted on individually. The Recreation Department came forward with $45,000 for resurfacing the ball fields at Mill Street and Thayer Field. The fencing at $35,000 is dangerous and needs to be replaced, and $20,000 for the dugouts to have equity between softball, baseball, everybody's safe and protected. That comes to a total of $100,000. There was $21,812 in their designated fund, so we're taking $78,188 from the undesignated to bring it up to the $100,000. We didn't get anything from affordable housing. We hope to have that come through next year. But in historic preservation, the Historics Commission asked for $13,500 to do a total assessment of the Middle Cemetery on Route 70. So restoration work and preservation work can be started because there's a lot of neglect and the stones are broken, and we've got 37 Revolutionary War soldiers buried there. A lot of important events. People have been buried there who contributed to the town, the country, all that. The Bulfin Church, or the First Church as it's known, has asked for $12,700 to repair the portico. That church is over 200 years old and is a national landmark. And our library in the children's wing has asked for $25,000 to preserve the beautiful casement windows there, which it's actually cheaper to repair them than to get them custom made in the style that is originally designed. So Historic asked for a total of $51,200, and they had the same $21,812 in their designated fund, and they're taking $29,388 from undesignated. So it brings their total up to $51,200, and that's it. If there are more slides that will show what's going to be left over and that kind of thing, but I hope that everybody will understand that this is to help preserve Lancaster's quality of life, the things that will never come out of the general budget, the things that are important to us as a town to, so we can have those things that make Lancaster the wonderful place it is. Any questions?
You heard her. Any questions? Hearing none.
So everybody will vote for it. It'll be great.
I will.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Article 11 is also not Kate. Was it Frank? Mr. Streeter, you're up.
I just have the motions.
Take it away, Frank.
Frank Streeter, Chair, Planning Board. Planning Board has 3 proposed zoning amendments, the text of each of which is in the warrant. The first is to amend the accessory apartment bylaw. Of the zoning bylaws, the fundamental change is to take them from a special permit to much closer to matter of right. This is designed to encourage the construction of affordable dwelling units in town, which, although we've had the bylaw for a while, it has been rarely used because of the difficulty of the process. So we've revised the bylaw, proposed revisions to make it easier. Interestingly, I just learned today that there is a bill in the legislature right now to make affordable dwelling units a matter of right use everywhere in the Commonwealth. So Lancaster is getting ahead of the curve, but possibly not by very much. I'm pleased to go through any individual aspects if there are any questions.
Any questions on Article 11?
Frank, through the chair.
Ms. Turner?
Mr. Streeter, just to clarify, you said this seems like some long overdue updates to the bylaw. You referred to the legislation that is before the general court right now. There is nothing in this, unless I missed it, that requires these to be deed restricted affordable, is there?
Yes, there is.
Is there?
It is.
So I missed
However, let me clarify. So when we speak of deed-restricted affordable housing, that is the articles, that is the units that are on the town's subsidized housing inventory, AKA affordable housing. These accessory dwelling units, while they will be deed restricted for purposes of this bylaw, will not contribute to the town's SHI.
That's what I was
Subsidized housing
referring to, yes.
inventory. So those are 2 separate things. The deed restriction in this bylaw is in place simply to memorialize the terms under which the unit was created, so the town does not default potentially to multifamily housing because people forget the requirements as properties are sold. So the deed restriction will go with the property to memorialize this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on Article 11? Hearing no further questions on Article 11, Article 12, which I believe is still you, Frank, right?
So Article 12 is the planning board in conjunction with the Affordable Housing Trust held a hearing on possible changes to the inclusionary zoning bylaw. We thought the change was going to be fairly simple, but as we dug into it, it appeared to be a lot more complicated than we originally thought. So we pulled the article for the moment.
Okay. Article 14.
Article 14 is changes to the town's use regulation schedule as printed in the warrant. And there is one slight change from the warrant, that being that the religious and educational uses, section 220-8.4, the exempt uses, which is the second section, will all continue to be matter of right and not planning board as expressed by the state constitution. However, the non-exempt uses will now come under planning board regulation.
Which, just for the record, when you go, you would say as printed in the warrant, but you'll have to make a notion that this replaces it. So I'll write it out.
Just to clarify, Kate is saying that when this happens, because there's a slight change to what is printed in the warrant, there will be language that Frank will articulate at the time, and that will be the language on which we are voting.
Effectively, we are not making the changes that we had thought we were going to make in this one line of the use table.
There we go.
So those will be staying the same.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Well, just anybody out here? Seeing none, Ms. Turner.
Okay, Chairman Streeter, so are you changing Article 1 to disallow the outdoor recreation motorized equipment as printed?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything else is as printed in the warrant.
Okay.
Any further questions on Article 14? Hearing none, Article 15.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Streeter. Is this you?
Yes, sir.
All right, Article 15, back to the incomparable Kate Hodges.
Okay. Article 15 seeks to reaffirm the vote taken in March of 2021 at special town meeting to allow the town to enter into a sale partnership agreement for the property located at 0 Old Common Road, also known as the DCAM property. The terms of the agreement are relatively the same as the last agreement, except for that DCAM has agreed to extend the date by which Lancaster has to agree to enter into the program to June 30th of 2024. And that is because I have been working with Mass Development on a memorandum of agreement and a one-stop grant funding to do environmental testing on the facility, including an environmental assessment inside the buildings and around the decommissioned power plant. And so those will not start until after May 30th when the grants are awarded, and the board needs to have the time to go over the MOU from Mass Development, which I just received this afternoon, and vote upon that. And I figured both of those would take, I tried for a year, and DCAM came back with 6 months. So hopefully by that time, we will have determined what we want to do. I don't know how much detail, I probably wouldn't go into this level of detail at town meeting, but this does warrant a discussion I think a lot of people think this is a no-brainer, and while it has the potential to be great for the town, there are holding costs associated with this property that are upwards of $100,000 a year. And given that we're in a financial position where we can't already meet our obligations, I think it's incumbent upon us to be very careful with what we think that we can manage in the time frame that we're in. I would hope that by June 30th of '24, we have many extra hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I just don't know if this would be the highest and best use for us right now. So I'm glad that we're doing the due diligence, and I'm sure the board will discuss it at length.
Any questions?
George Franz, 13 Highfield Drive. What happens if the town of Lancaster chooses not to take advantage? I mean, who will decide what happens with that property?
Sure. So what would happen is, I guess similar to any other property that's sold, DCAM will effectively put it on the market like you would any other property, and they would sell it to a developer who either would be working with the town to change the regulations of what could happen there through the planning board, or they build by right with how it is there. The idea is to have Lancaster sort of driving the bus for what happens here, and I think in a perfect world that would be great. I just don't know if this was 3 to 5 years from now and we have the ability to have these holding costs, but I think this is going to need to be a policy decision that's sort of debated probably in and amongst many of the boards. Because ultimately the ability for Lancaster to determine what happens at that site certainly is advantageous. We just have to also get through, is it advantageous at the cost of 3 years at $100,000 a year? And I think that's just a community discussion, and kind of comes back to the values of the community and what we want to spend money on.
Thank you. And to clarify, it's currently state property. State agency is DCAM, which is short for Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance. Yes.
Linnea Lake Conservancy, 1394 Main Street. What is the property currently zoned for?
It is right now some of it is commercial and some of it is educational. Most of it is exempt land. So you would do residential without an issue. A mixed development may require more work by the planning board.
Yeah, it seems like a perfect place for some affordable housing to go in with other things. CPA funding could help go through that because you can bond with CPA. So that should definitely be in the mix of something to think about.
That's great.
Yeah, I would suspect that we would have, once we get past this hurdle, we would have extensive conversations with, as Kate pointed out, all the boards and commissions, but also the townspeople, not just the neighbors, but folks across the community to talk about the balance that Kate is laying out for us and what we would like to see. It is a rare moment in time for us as a community to get back from the Commonwealth what they've had for probably a century. And it's 82 acres of land. So it's a significant piece that that we want to make sure that gets handled correctly. And so I appreciate Kate's shepherding this through the process, and we look forward to seeing what's next. Any other questions about Article 15? Article 16. Just one more to go. It's exciting, isn't it?
So Article 16 is an establishment of a tax fairness committee. It's part of a larger initiative to develop a senior means tax exemption program. So many communities in the Commonwealth have petitioned the state legislature to allow the adoption of a special act, which is senior means tested tax exemption. And the parameters of the program vary by community, but they share a common goal, which is to provide targeted property tax relief to older homeowners which in turn helps them then continue to afford to live in their homes and in their communities. So the maximum exemption amount for each fiscal year is generally recommended by the assessors and the town administration, and then it's subsequently ratified by the select board. So for eligible individuals, the credit is applied to their December property tax bills along with the state circuit breaker funds, which would be accessible through the town social worker. There are some parameters to be able to access those funds, and one of them is to have a tax fairness committee that's looking at the parameters that are set for what constitutes being able to avail yourself of this. What are the income limitations? What are the property house valuations that are there? Generally speaking, it's property values that are under what the median is, with assets that are under what the state circuit breaker asset fund liabilities are. So there's some work to be done, but this would be step one. As far as the senior tax, the tax exempt program, that similar to what Mr. Williston talked about earlier today with the expansion of the select board, is a multi-year process. So once the tax fairness committee issues whatever their determination is based on the means tested exemption program, they bring those parameters to the select board. The select board decides to adopt those parameters and puts the subject for a warrant article at town meeting. If town meeting approves that, we send that to the legislature for a cursory look. If they send it back with minimal changes or not enough changes that they're substantive, that it needs to go back to town meeting, it then becomes a ballot question. If it passes at the ballot question, the finalized language comes back to town meeting at the following special or annual, and then back to the legislature, and at that point it can be ratified. The good thing about the program is that it has to be revisited every 3 years, so it can take into account the ebbs and flows that we have as far as cash flow in a town. And so if we start a program and we earmark certain monies for it, say we want to take $100,000 out of new growth and allocate it there, that doesn't mean that we're bound to do that every year thereafter. So it's a program that is a living program that really is able to kind of go with what we're seeing economically at the time. But it also helps to keep citizens on fixed incomes, citizens who have lived here for a really long time, in their home and able to age in place. And it's administered, like I said, through Health and Human Services and the assessors. And we have the capability now with our licensed social work staff to be able to avail ourselves of the program through the state. So I think that this would be a really worthwhile thing to start, particularly in the wake of a potential override.
Thank you. This is fantastic, and as Kate said, it's the first step. I know many of us up here have talked about this when we were seeking this this office. It's really important, particularly now as we're facing an override that, again, must pass in order for us not to face really difficult decisions and huge cuts. But we can't do that without recognizing the impact on people in our community, on folks like my parents, God bless their souls, who might have been priced out of their home by tax increases, which is why it's really important for us to develop programs like this. And I know when I got into office, Kate and I started talking about this. I know Jason and Alex have been talking about this before, so this is a really positive first step. We hope the town acts on it, gives us the ability to create the Tax Fairness Committee, and continue the town down this really positive road to provide some relief for folks who need it. Let me just check, see if there's any questions.
Melissa Carlson, 15 Runaway Brook Road. Whoa, that's not.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah.
Sorry. So I'm going to try not to botch this, but I'm going to do the best I can. So basically, the way I understand this is we are able to go after something like this because of the departments that we now have in town. Is that correct, Kate?
That's correct.
So yourself and the select board working together, and also having, can I say Kelly and Caitlin, Health and Human Services, and our social workers. So this is probably, I'm guessing, one of the many programs that could come down the road for us because we have people that are qualified and are able to look for these programs for the town.
That's correct. Yes. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep. Seeing no other questions there. Mr. Allison?
Just a couple straightforward questions. What is a vote of yes for this? What is the financial obligation to residents?
A vote of yes is 0 right now.
Cool. And paraphrasing here, this is really about starting a committee to explore this topic for future policymaking.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions on Article 16? Anybody? Okay. Article 17.
So, under Massachusetts general law, the maximum age for certain members of firefighter groups is age 65. However, the towns can seek legislation, which is what we're looking to do here. The legislation has to be specific to the firefighter. The chief is looking to authorize special legislation for Stephen Hilliger, who will be turning 65, and he believes is of sound mind, body, and soul, and to continue working, and would like for him to be able to remain a member of the department.
My one question is, how do we determine his sound soul?
That's the chief. The chief does that.
Oh, well, all right.
Yeah,
That's another
with a
reason why we shouldn't cut your
thermometer.
department, because that's a very important skill.
It also judges his dancing ability.
Well, I've
That's
seen
part
that,
of
so
it.
it's very good. So, all right, any questions about Article 17?
Wait, you get it? Soul?
Yeah, we got it. Everyone got it, that's why no one left.
Come on!
Dave,
Thank you.
Dave Millette, 2748 North Main Street. Is there a limit to this period of time for Mr. Hilliger? Would this have to be done every year, or?
Stand by, the chief's going to answer. Right behind you.
Yes, they can only stay 5 years, so he'd have to retire at 70.
Which is the
Thank
mandatory
you.
retirement age for some other groups in public safety as well. Great. Any other questions on Article 17? All right, folks, we are near the promised land. There's 2 more to go. You guys want to take a break? No? Okay. Article 18.
So Article 18 was a request by the Conservation Commission to amend their general bylaw by changing their membership from 7 to 5 members. I would imagine that their chair, Tom Christopher, will, I know he will be there to talk about this, but effectively, they have had a hard time maintaining 7 members. It's a large group, and up until just today, when a new member was appointed, they were unable to achieve quorum, and so it's been difficult. So I think for business purposes, this makes sense. And so this, because it's a bylaw, has to go to the legislature and needs to be voted upon at town meeting. But I am told that the Conservation Commission met and unanimously voted for this action.
Okay. Any questions on Article 18?
Which I can't answer.
Right, you can't answer them anyway, but it takes us from 7 to 5, Conservation Commission. Last article, everybody, Article 19. It has 27 slides and should only take a half hour.
Well, actually, Mr. Chair, Article 19 is a citizen's petition by Ms. Susan Smiley to amend the recall bylaw, but as a citizen's petition, I won't be presenting it, and she's not here. So what I can say is that it is outlined in the warrant, and I think if anybody has any questions before town meeting and they want to email Ms. Smiley, she's a member of the Finance Committee, and her email should be online, and if not, you can email me, and I can request of her that I give you her email address.
Any questions before I go to the board from anybody in the audience? Mr. Allison?
Yeah, I received a note from Ms. Smiley that she will be available there to talk at town meeting. So she wanted to pass that along.
Well, there we are. All right, any other questions about an article that we can't answer? We can come up with something if you want. All right, any other actions to come before this board? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn this incredibly productive forum?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion? All those in favor, Ms. Turner?
Aye.
Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Mr. Kerrigan, aye. We are adjourned.
Thank you.